We are the
Soca
Soca Analyst.
Analyst.
Yes. We're back with podcast number 2 of the year. See, you guys are proud. We're keeping it going. We're not letting it die. We're keeping it going. At the time of recording this, it's about a week after, Carnival Tuesday in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm here with my two amazing co-hosts, Savanah and Ashley. It's so great to be on with you today. And we're going to be talking all about, Trinidad Carnival, pretty much from, the time when Savanah were there from Soca weekend all the way to when Ash was there, which was pretty much just like a couple days ago.
Don't remind me.
I know, right? We all wish we were still there. So yes, be sure to stay tuned for all of it because you don't want to miss it. So let we pull up.
Soca Analyst. Caribbean culture to the world.
All right. So we're not wasting no time now. We just jump right into it. Now. So Trinidad Carnival 2024. Let me just get your thoughts about it in general. How did you both feel about it? I don't know. Ash, you want to go first?
So, literally, I had the time of my life. Like, after my 2 weeks was up, my plane lands in JFK, literally in tears, like hysterically crying, like, like trying to like not like alert anyone else or draw attention to myself. But I know for me, like I just had the time of my life. Even though I went by myself this trip, like obviously, like I have my family, I have a couple friends that live in Trinidad, but I literally went to Trinidad by myself. For me to have that much fun, to be hysterically crying the way I was when I landed in JFK, like, oh, 10 out of 10. Like, Trinidad never disappoints. And I know the naysayers, everybody has something different to say. But for me, like, 10 out of 10, like, never disappoints.
Vibes. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself so much. Savannah!
Hi.
Savannah Grass. So for those of you guys who don't know, like usually Sav and I, we like go to Trinidad during like I would say like the equivalent of like what was like Marshall Monday. Maybe Sav, you get on a little bit before.
So usually before we start going together, but even when, before we were going together, I think we usually flew in around the same time. So we always get there the week before Carnival week. So we get in the Sunday, the Saturday, there for the whole, last week lead up to Monday and Tuesday, and then usually stay a little bit after for a cool down to catch ourselves. This year was a little different. We, due to work conflicts, unfortunately, thanks to my work emails, we went in a bit earlier. So we were actually in town for Soca weekend, which is another big weekend, both for people in Trinidad, but also a lot of folks that we know in the diaspora and in the area that we're familiar with, Queens, where we live. A lot of people head down for that weekend. So that was a game changer for us because we went in a month earlier than we usually do. Essentially, it was a quote unquote short season, so short season by like a week, but it does make a difference, and I do feel like it did make a difference this year in terms of the music and the events that were had locally there. But yeah, we went in and we had a great time. We were there for like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks from Soca weekend, pretty much right up until when we would normally fly in for Trinidad Carnival. So we left right before the action, some would say. But the time that we had there was sweet. It was different. We went to a lot of events that I personally always wanted to go to that I never really had an opportunity to go to because they happen outside of the time that I normally, come into town. So got to try a mix of more popular events, some staples, but also some more, not up and coming events, I would say, but I think a little more like down to earth, like local events.
Yeah.
Still, popular amongst a lot of people there, but just ones that never really hit the mainstream radar, in my opinion, for folks that fly in. So I was really lucky. I think we were really lucky to try those. And overall, the events, I wouldn't say any of them were a miss that we went to. 10 out of 10 for all the ones we went to.
They were all like very unique and different in their own way, and they offered different things. Yeah, like for myself, like I've been going to, Carnival in Trinidad since 2018. And from then to now, like so many things have happened. Like so many things have changed, some for better, some for worse. But like this was really the first time I've ever gone like in January. And I remember like always talking to you and talking to like a few other people, a couple of my friends there. And they were always like, yeah, man, like, the week of Carnival is cool and stuff. But they were always like, in terms of events, they always feel like the month of January tend to have what they considered, like, in their opinion, the better events. And I was all right, cool. Like I want to see what this is like because every year I always did the same events. I like came in and it was like Marshall Monday on the Monday, literally like straight from off the jumbo jet, went to Marshall Monday, and I was like, all right, cool. And like Marshall Monday, for those of you who don't know, who've never been, and it's not happening anymore, but it's literally like it's this massive show. It's so huge, like it has so many people, and it always runs late. And like in terms of like when it's gonna end, and like Masha literally just has like a whole bunch of stuff he puts together, and it's cool. Like like in hindsight, looking back at Marshall Monday, like I admire it a lot. There were times, and I was always lucky to go because I always like had a friend who would always give me like a backstage pass, so I kind of got to see how things were like behind the scenes, but also like from the front. And I just remember like every year, man, I'm like, this is a great show, but I'm like, Masha was always so stressed. Like, I would always just hear him like visibly cussing on the mic sometimes, and everyone just give him a pass because it's his own show. It's Masha Monday. But like, yeah, it used to be like Masha Monday, and then the Tuesday, I didn't do Cast Tuesday until 2019. The first year I did a show, I went to like a really small play that Tree Canal had actually put together, and it was really dope, like super cultural. Um, and then yeah, the Wednesday, we would go to like Punchy Wednesday. The Thursday would be like such a crazy day because the Thursdays usually when they
Thursday
have,
is when pace. So Thursday
it's
for a
like they
lot of
have
people,
yeah
by the
yeah
time Thursday comes around the week before Carnival, that's the day everybody's in town. If you're not in town, you're missing for sure.
yeah.
And that's the time when, like, I remember I was planning to fly in one year on a Thursday, and I was like, I physically can't do this because I'm coming off the plane to a fete, then straight from that fete I'm going to another fete, then straight from that fete I'm going to another fete, and then Friday maybe you rest, and then you're going to another fete, and then it's just paced from Thursday until the end of Tuesday, until
So
Ash Wednesday, essentially. And I was
Thursday,
like,
yeah.
I cannot and will not do that.
Yo, Thursday for like when I used to go with Gel, it used to be 3 events in a row on
Mm-hmm.
Thursday. You would start at like mad early, maybe like 3, 4 in the morning to get to AM Beach.
Yep.
And then from Beach, we would go to Patrice's show, which Ash came to one year. We did like a really awesome recap video. And then right after that, everyone would go to Tribe Ignite. And by the time you hit Ignite, like I was dead. And then Friday would usually be pretty chill from what I remember. I think on the weekends, like sometimes it would be like a boat ride.
Brainwash, the huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about Brainwash. Yeah, and then we would do
Bush.
Brainwash. Yeah, Bush. And then Juve, and then the road. So it was like by the time you put it all together, it was such like an insane number of events. So like now, like this year, going in January for the first time, I found was like a lot more chill because it was like just events on the weekends, and then we just had during the week to do like whatever we wanted to do, which I
And
really
we got
liked.
to see a lot of cultural things. Like I would say, I love going during Carnival, but I've also been to Trinidad like various times during the year. Like I go during November. I used to go spend summers there. I used to go, just randomly whenever family needed you to come down there. So I've been to Trinidad like at various parts of the year, not strictly related to Carnival. And I like one of the most memorable things of going in January or just in general and earlier in the season leading up to Carnival is feeling the atmosphere and that energy start to build because it is palpable through the city. Like it's palpable when you get there, like during Carnival week and you land and you get out the airport and they have Steel Pan or they have Soca playing or they have just people greeting you like in Piarco and it's like, welcome home because it's just truly like your home. But going earlier in the season before they really had a lot of that stuff and just I always feel the sense of relief when I touch down. Like Rich knows I have a specific seat on the plane that I sit in so I can see a certain view when I land in Trinidad because that's my signal that I'm home. And it's just what I grew up seeing all the years that I've gone to Trinidad, where it's like once I see this landmark when I when I touch down on the plane, I know I reach. So going in January was nice because you get to see just the energy, the makers of Carnival essentially making Carnival come to life before everybody arrives and kind of like floods the city and floods the country, and that energy really reaches its peak. Seeing it in its building stages, like just going to the mall and seeing them do those oh my god, I forgot who was doing it, but seeing like, they had those Soca workouts on Tuesdays and Thursdays by the
Oh
mall.
man, yo, by
And
Movie Town, yo, the
yeah.
Soca workouts were crazy because that shit was rammed out like every day. So Ash, the Soca
And you
workouts,
saw the crowds
right?
build the weeks
Yeah,
that we
it
were
would
there.
just get big. So like we went to like Movie Town because we had to the first time we went
Well,
to
we
go
were
there
running
was to,
errands, then
and
we
had
just
to
went
pick
to
up we had to pick up our tickets
Oh,
for
yeah,
Soca,
yeah, yeah.
right? So the office that they had set up for WoW events for Soca, you had to go to like essentially where Movie Town is into the mall. And then you had to go like pick up your tickets and stuff, and they scan your ID and do all the security stuff that they have to do. But like in front,
In the frontmost parking lot of Movie
yeah.
Town, like right off the highway, essentially, they would just, they had some, booths set up and they had a big stage erected. And like after work, I guess, I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken, they would have like, they would have people come and MC and they would have a DJ spinning and people would come and just work out like right after work or, anybody who wanted to join in. And it was just like, it was so great to see the crowd because I remember the first time we saw it the week we were there, we were like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, yo, I always see this. Like, I always see this on Instagram. I always see people doing this. Like, it's nice to see it in real time and see people coming out, just and, exercising, but also enjoying soca music and the new soca music too. And just having a good time, like a sense of community being built. And then the like week after we came back and the crowd had like doubled. And I was like, this is vibes. I'm like, if I was dressed, I would join them, but I wasn't dressed.
The funniest part is like, it's not even just the amount of people. It's also like a lot of people are like older, middle-aged people, but they're doing the workouts like so intense.
Oh, they're in sync too.
And they're all in sync. It's like they all have like this like weird hive mind, and they're just playing like regular soca music. They could be playing like market, and they have a choreographer in front / like instructor like doing like all the moves. And I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, this is like a small fete all on its own, but it's like a giant soca exercise thing. And I'm like, I know here in the States we kind of have like cool things like Soca Size and these other organizations that do it, but like it was my first time seeing something like that where it's like all these local people getting together and doing something with soca that wasn't just like drinking and partying.
What makes it, because like people who live there are probably like, oh, this is normal for us, but I think what's so unique and like why it's a novelty for us is you don't really get that sense of community like where we live, like Rich said, we have Soca Size. There's programs and things you can join with like your local gym or your local community group or just your friends if you want to go do a soca workout at home. That you can sign up for like Soca Size online sometimes. Like there's all these things that you could do. But there's nothing quite like just seeing a group of people, particularly older people, because like, my mom would love that. We used to do Soca Size at home when they had it virtually during the pandemic, and my mom was all over it. And I'm like, if she was still living at home, I know that's something she would love. Like she used to go exercising around the Savanah all the time. I'm like, this is just a stone's throw away. Like she would be all over that if, we had things like that here.
Yeah.
And it's just seeing a community come together and do, something like that that's so enriched in culture, which like it's culture that's normal for them because it's Trinidad, that it's the home of that culture. Whereas for us who craves that culture all the time and have to actively look for it in New York, it's just so warming and comforting to actually see, it being embraced actively. Of course, if it is, but it's just, it warms my heart seeing it in real time there versus,
I totally
when you're coming from the cold where here it's not like something that we have the opportunity to partake in very often.
No, I totally get you. Like, if we were to talk to someone there, they'd be like, yeah, boy, this is just a normal thing. Like, we do that. I mean, for us, we're like, oh my God, wow, this is so dope.
Right. Don't Caribbean people always know how to make a fete out of anything?
Yes.
Right?
Like, literally.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
It's so funny. So, yeah, I mean, like, we, like, going in January, going on the Monday, like, so yeah, we went and we got our tickets for Soca. And, should we start there, I guess?
We could start in January. I think.
And we can go all the way up until when Ash came back.
Yeah.
We're going to try to cover a whole month.
We're going to try to cover
We're
a
gonna
month
try our
in
best, you guys.
A quick
the
podcast.
whole season.
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty
the whole
much.
season.
Yeah.
So I think going into January, I mean, I was telling Ash earlier, like while you were getting things set up, I remember, like, if we just want to get into the soca aspect of it for a second, in January, it was a short season. Everybody said it was a short season. If you look at the FET calendar, there were a lot less FETs than we typically feel that we have in a season. Seems to have felt or have been a feeling that there was less. But I think there was plenty for a short season. I think everybody had enough to go to. And there was truly no shortage of soca music for 2024. I saw someone do a comparison recently about the soca that was put out, I think this year versus previous years. And in their playlist, they actually had more songs added to their playlist for this year than previous years. I don't know if it's just, it's arbitrary, right? So I don't know if it's just that person was more in tune this year than previous years. Maybe they missed songs in the previous years, but it does feel like there was more in the season that got played, you know? And this is speaking from me. My personal opinion, because people love to say, well, no, this didn't get played, or this, it's subjective, right? Depending on where you went, maybe only 5 songs played. Depending on if you went to another fete, maybe all the songs played, or wherever you went, it's totally subjective, right? To what events you went to and where you were doing your most listening and things like that. But in my personal opinion, I feel like there was a lot more popular soca this year. I feel like in rotation, there were a lot more songs than like just 5 songs being played. There was actually a good amount of songs that were being played. Maybe it was the same 30 songs instead of the same 5 songs, but there was more in that usual rotation of only 5 songs that's being played.
Yeah, at least for January, right? And I think a part of that too, which we can get into later, was that like a lot of the events we went to were like a lot of like local DJs.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And that has a big a big part in it, right? Because we went early in the season before a lot of the popular out of town DJs came in. But I think in general there was overall, I think a little more awareness of the soca. No, people knowing that it was a short season. I do feel like people were looking for the new soca and they wanted to know, like, they wanted to learn the soca in time for parties. Was that always the case? No. Like, there was a lot of songs that we learned that we got to parties that we didn't hear play. Pretty Search Party, for example.
Oh
Beaten
my
Road.
God. That was one of my favorites, and I was really disappointed about how much play that didn't get. Because that song was underrated.
Even though we're jumping to February, like, because we weren't there, right? When you were there during that week of Carnival, did it get played? Because for us in January, we barely heard it at all.
I didn't hear it in any fete.
I don't think we heard it in any fete.
Because if I heard it, I would have lost my mind.
I'm curious to know.
I didn't hear it.
Literally.
No, like, same. I didn't hear it either. Please, guys, don't take my head off. But maybe it was just the events I was at. I don't know. But I didn't hear it in fetes. I didn't hear it on the road. If anything, I heard it on the radio, like on my way to fetes or on my way home, but...
we heard it on the radio because I remember one day we were coming out of where we, our parking lot, and it came on the radio. I was like, oh my God, they're playing. And I turned it up. I turned that shit up real quick. I put down all the windows and we're driving down into St. James and I'm like, they're playing it. And we were singing it. And it was just, it was a vibe because we were so happy that the radio was giving it airplay.
Yeah.
And you're right, it did, because I don't think that was the first time because I had that reaction, but it wasn't the only time it played on the radio. In fetes though, I didn't hear it because if I did hear it, I would have been like you. I would have run up and down, but we didn't hear it, and that's one of many. There's other songs. Beating Road I know came out a little later while we were there, and I think that picked up more steam.
Even Spirit Waste, like Spirit Waste played plenty on radio to the point where they even had like Mila Caribe give like a really dope story of like how Spirit Waste
and they had
came
it replaying
about.
on one of the stations. Yes, I
Yeah,
remember.
and then we go to the events and like we're not hearing Spirit Waste like at all, and I'm like, man, this is such a nice song. Like I loved it. It just made me feel so happy.
The Nyla and the Marge, I love that song too, and I didn't hear it, and I thought that's such a groovy spiritual song to open the party to.
Did they play Inventor by the time you reach by Ola Tunje?
That did get a lot of play.
Okay.
That
That's
did
nice.
get a lot,
Yeah.
especially on the road too. Like,
Yeah.
like the trucks are just rolling off, we chip in, and they play that as a starter. Or like when they were kind of trying to like regroup and bring us back, get in this section kind of vibe. They played that after we crossed the Savanah stage. Everybody's tired, and we're like, all right, like what's next? That got played. And that was one of the songs this year that I actually learned to love, because you hear songs before you get there and and you're like, oh yeah, and then you get there and you're in the environment and that bass from the speaker hits you and you're like, oh, this is it, this is my shit. That's kind of how that song was for me.
No,
Yeah.
that's good.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah, I was telling Savannah too. I was like, there's a lot of songs like for me personally. I think it's like a normal thing, right? And like people get mad when you say this kind of stuff, but I'm like, yo, it's okay if you hear a song the first few times and you don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay if even after the season you don't like it. Everybody has their own.
Plenty of songs build. We see it all the time. We saw it all the time because, Mashal took a sabbatical this year for school, with the exception of his Calypso, which we'll get into later, I think. But you see it all the time too with, Mashal songs that have historically dropped. Mashal used to drop songs all the time, and then people used to be like, "Yo, what Obia did Mashal put in the song?" Because 2 weeks later, after everybody fought it down, everybody's jumping up to it on the road, and now it's running Road
It's so
March.
true.
And
Yeah.
people always used to say mafia this, mafia that. There was a big talk about if there is a Soca mafia circulating, the interwebs right now. But we won't get into that just yet either. But songs take time to build. All those things aside, songs take time to build. One of the, case in point, I should say. What was it? The Farmer song.
For me personally,
Oh my God, I
this
love
year,
that one.
yeah,
The farm. That was a creeper.
So for me, the Farmer had 2 huge songs this year, right? First one obviously being Go Down Any Senta, which was dominating like everything. And then the second was How I Live In. And I
yeah.
remember the
Yep.
first time we
Yep.
heard How I Live In, we were like in the car. And I
Yes.
told Savannah, I was like, I don't know, I'm not really feeling it. I just kind of feel like it's not really anything like different. And, I just feel like it's like,
get to
it's,
eat
it's
our
a, it has a
words.
great positive message, but I just found like it was too boring, right?
Yeah.
Mind you, like I feel the same way. 2 weeks later, I wake up in the morning and I'm just like in my bed. I get up and I'm just, I just start singing. How I live in better than them. And then the song is stuck in my head for like the whole day and then all the way through Carnival season. I'm like, this is a great song. Like, why was it that I didn't really like this song so much? And I just realized like I just feel like sometimes the way like people's brains work is like sometimes you kind of have to like give it time to grow because you're just not used to the sound. And then once you kind of listen to it and everything like that, and it starts hitting
Sometimes
you, like it starts to change how you start to change about how you feel about it internally, right? And then sometimes I found that happen a lot, like not just with like Farmer songs, but it's as you were saying, like even with Mashal's music back in the day, like I used to feel that way a lot, especially when he used to drop like 5, 6, 7 songs by like the time December would come. And I'd be like, majority of these are kind of like, okay, I know he's gonna drop his monsters, but then time would go on and I'm like, wow, like this is actually a great song. Like I wonder why I didn't like it, but it doesn't really matter. Like I think it's great now.
See, I never felt like that about any song Marshall dropped. Anytime Marshall drops a song, this is it. This is a hit. The next one. No, this is a hit. Every song, like, he never disappoints, okay? Like, anybody that has anything bad to say about Marshall, I'm sorry. I'm going to pray for you. Like, I hope you get on board, but, like, I'm sorry. He could do no wrong in my eyes.
We have Marshall's number 1 fan,
Fan,
here.
yeah.
But hey, I mean, like that's like a good thing. You know what I mean? I think like a lot more artists need
People like that.
people like that,
because
who are really like diehard fans, because it's not even really that you're someone who like blindly just does it. You're someone who like actually has an appreciation for what he puts out. And I feel like so many of like the younger artists could really use that. And I feel like Search Party was a perfect example of that this year. It's like, Savannah and I have been Pretty fans for like years.
years.
You know what I
think
mean?
I
Pretty's
love
a very
Pretty.
underrated artist. Like he is.
Underrated, yeah.
I love him. Like what that song? That's your money for the
Oh,
nigga.
Lost
Girl,
and
we were
Found.
listening today.
Yeah, Lost and Found. Yeah.
Today that song could play, and I would act like it was the first time I heard it. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god.
We were listening
Like-
today. We actually went through because we were like, we were looking back at the trajectory of his career, like when we were driving earlier, and we were like, he's had such a phenomenal run. Like people forget, Away played to the point that I think we got fed up of hearing it, but it was such a great like hit from him back in the day, and that was 2015. And then you think of like, his growth as an artist into Say Yeah, and then into You Bad and Lost and Found, and all the way up till now with Beaten Road and Search Party. And you can see the growth as an artiste. Like you can really see how the music has kind of changed and the sound's gotten a little more mature, and the lyrical content matter has only gotten better and better. Like his lyrics, like I think the lyrics in Search Party, there's some of them where I'm just like, I heard it, I'm like, that is lyrics. Like that is how you tell.
relatable.
Yeah, that's how you tell a
relatable.
story. And she's just been so great at. He's always been great at it, but he's gotten so much better at it over time too. And it hurts to see as a fan of his, like his music not necessarily getting the forward in a season where it could have been really amazing. I felt like it was a perfect song for the season. It could be a perfect song for any season. I feel like it's timeless in that sense. I could hear it next Carnival and I'd be like, I still relate to this because it's a timeless feeling of getting lost in a party or getting lost on the road, and your friends are like, we have to send a search party to find Sav, and it's like, no, you don't. You'll find me on Wednesday. Because like that's the vibe. That's Carnival in a nutshell. That's going to a fete in a nutshell. And he captured that so like eloquently and so vibesy, and it just, I wish I heard it more. Like that's the
Yeah.
moral of the story. I wish I heard it more. Beaten Road literally has a jumbie in it. If I was on the road this year for Juve Morning, I would have dragged myself all through Port of Spain to that song. They could have played it on repeat. I would have dragged myself behind every truck I found until it was time to come off the road, because it has such a spiritual jumbie in it that you just want to hear it when sun's coming up at Juve. You want to hear it, as you see the sun rising and you hear the bass pounding from a Juve truck and you're covered in paint and you just whole day at Beaten Road, because the
Right.
day's just beginning, and it's just starting. Carnival's just starting. Juve Morning. We have 2 more days essentially to go, and it captures that feeling perfectly. And I'm glad I heard it started getting a little more play the weekend that I left. And I was really glad to hear that. I saw him putting out videos of it, and, he was going to schools and singing it. He did it at Patsy's concert, and it got some good, reviews. And I just, I wish he got more for it this season. And there was a lot of other artists too that I wish got more for it this season. But as a longtime fan of his, I wanted more from him, wanted more for him this season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like similar to like Teja, which we'll definitely get into, like, pretty also like I think before he started doing like a lot of like his own music, I think he also like wrote. So like he wrote him and Second Star together both wrote Kings and Queens, which to this day I still feel like
Monster song.
I tell people, I'm like,
Monster.
Kings and Queens is one of the best soca songs created in the past decade. Like, and it never gets any play. And I get so upset because I still listen to that song and I feel like my soul leaves my body when I hear that song. It's such a beautiful, incredible song. And I just love seeing, like, even though the music video was very simple, it was so effective. I love seeing like the energy that Second had. And for me, that was like really one of the first times I started listening to him. And he had other songs before that I had heard. I just didn't know it was him. And like just everything about that song, like how spiritual it was, how they brought in like the quartet group that I think they're called the SJC Voix Quartet. And they like did all the background vocals for that song. And I'm like, this is just out of this world. And like you don't really hear songs like that anymore, and I wish that more people would start to like play that song and really give it its flowers, because there really has not been another song like just like Kings and Queens that has come out recently. Like it just kind of stands on its own right now. But like I just look back on like going back to like a lot of the older music and seeing like the role that Preety played in a lot of those songs that a lot of people don't really know about. And yeah, same thing. I'm just really happy for him that he's like really, pushed himself like as an artist, and like he's pretty much like in his own spotlight now. But I still feel like there's still a lot more potential in him, and like he deserves like a lot more love from just Caribbean people in general.
Yeah, and the diaspora, like the soca listeners outside of the Caribbean too. I mean, they're big consumers of soca here as well. And I think, he deserves love overarchingly. Soca is not just restricted to the Caribbean, although we know we've learned it, obviously it is the mecca of soca, but there are a lot of people here too that, claim, I'm not pointing at any people in particular, but there are a lot of people who want to say, or who do say that they're soca lovers. But part of, loving a genre means loving beyond just the staples of that genre, beyond the mashals and the kesses of that genre, which is really just the mashal and the kess of the genre, but also, embracing the next generation. If we want to keep soca music alive and we want our children and our grandchildren to know soca music as we did know it, it's arguably not going to sound the same in 20 years. But, it's important to support the generation that's going to carry it forward into our children's generation. And I think a lot of that, comes with paying homage to the past, and respecting the giants who have paved the way, long before Mashal as well. But, respecting the Mashal because he was he is the king of soca in our generation.
is.
He is. Sorry,
He
Ash.
is.
He is the king of soca in our generation, as is the Kes. Kes has paved his own way, rightfully so. And, all the ones coming up under them, the Patrice, the Destra. I could write a novel on Destra and the flowers that we should give her. I know there's a lot of critiques. There was a lot of critiques, but I love Destra. I think she's a timeless artist. I think there's a lot to be said um, for her legacy, and I think sometimes we don't respect her legacy. I think there are definitely things that could be done, to keep her music relevant in this generation. But I don't necessarily think that means that we should demean or forget the contributions that she's made and the legacy that she's built up. There's a reason she's still booked. People, wouldn't be booking her if she was nobody. She is the queen of Bacchanal, and she's been around for a very long time. And Patsy too. I feel like, we'll do this. We'll have a Women in Soca podcast for sure, but we'll talk more about them because there's a lot to be said about both Patsy and Destra as women in Soca, and kind of the fight down that I personally feel like they get as women artists compared to, the kings like the Machels and the Kesses of that genre, of the genre. So, but yeah, I think the younger artists definitely they're paving their way, and I think that's very evident with Nyla. Nyla is a big one, of course, but also like everything Tasia did this season. From just his roots as a writer and being very behind the scenes to singing his own songs, a lot of which like we almost forgot that he sang, but they were phenomenal songs like Strength of God or Strength of Man. I forget the name of the song. I'm jumbling it now, but like that song during COVID carried me through COVID. That was his 2020 release, and that was one of the most beautiful songs that I had heard that year. In the midst of all the COVID soca that came out, which all of was, there were so many gems that we just don't even listen to anymore, unfortunately. So I think, as lovers of the genre, there is a lot that we are responsible for in terms of educating ourselves and supporting our artists. The same way we support the Machels and the Kes, and even the Patsies, we have to support the next generation as well, because they are behind a lot of the music that we actually listen to as writers, as producers, as as contributors to that. We just don't know it, and that's nobody's fault per se. But to keep it going, I think we all have to take an active effort the way that we expect DJs and the artists as well to do in pushing the soca forward.
I think, going back to what you said, it's important for us to carry traditions, carry the legacy. Like, I think that's one of my number one fears is that I'll have a child and no offense, but I feel like my child will be like super Americanized, and I'm just like, I just cannot have that. Like, like nothing wrong with being in tune with your American roots, I should say, but I feel like coming from the Caribbean and being raised by my grandparents, and then being raised of a mixture of my grandparents and my parents, like I feel like there were so many things that they instilled in me that's super important that I want to give that to my kids. Like, I remember being like 3 years old, 4 years old, and my grandpa would always tell me, like, your friends would carry you, but they wouldn't bring you back. I'm like, what is this old man talking about? And it's like, now as an adult, I'm like, that's what he meant. Okay, makes sense. So it's just like, I do like strongly urge everyone out there, everyone listening, like, we have to keep it going. We have to carry it on. We have to big up the big artists, but also big up the small artists. Like, we just have to find a way to collectively come together and keep it going. Like, these traditions, like, you can't pay for this shit anywhere else. Like, we are the Caribbean. We are the West Indies, as Marshall previously has said once. We are the West Indies. So, like, I think it's super. You see, like, how I just threw in that Marshall line, right? But no, like, to your point, like, I think it's like super important that, like, we carry these traditions and like we keep it going. Like, a must. We have to.
It's definitely, and I think that's the nice thing about going, that we noticed, like, just getting back to going in January too, that just seeing how the culture really is its own life form there. We talk about the Mecca, but it truly is the Mecca over there. Like, this season above others, I've gotten such a newly profound appreciation I've always had it, right? Like I know mass doesn't just happen overnight. It is literally the backbone of so many people there who spend the entire year from the time mass is done, planning for the next year, making sure this celebration goes on, a celebration that dates back long before us historically, making sure that it goes on without fail every year, constantly innovating and transforming and improving upon the year before. I think that's like really it's we don't give those people, the mask makers as I like to call them, their flowers enough. I think it's one of those things that I've tried every carnival that I've gone, and even when I'm not there specifically for carnival, to just educate myself more about, because and going there in January this year just allowed me more time outside of the fets to just see the inner workings of like the industry a little bit more, like seeing mass camps, like, doing their final prep and, putting our costumes in boxes and getting them ready for everybody to fly in and come pick them up, and seeing, all the trucks driving around Port of Spain, like the stage being built and the decorations going up and the Carnival Village come to life. We were there for the opening of the John Cupid Carnival Village. And, it's so beautiful because, there weren't a lot of foreigners who were in town for Soca weekend. Nobody really knows or goes to those free localish events, that the NCC puts on, but we went, and I think it's so important because those are the people who mass is actually for. We had this conversation earlier where a lot of people feel like mass is becoming so inaccessible that it's outpricing the people that it's actually for. The people who live there, the people who support it and keep it going every year. And I think being able to go, during a different time in the season and just spend more time doing those events, because people, there's been a lot of conversation in the community this week with all the tweets that have gone out and the posts about like what's affordable versus not and price gouging. And I think having events and things that are affordable, not just free but affordable, for people that live there to go to and enjoy the same way we come in and spend 900 plus TT on an event that other people are like, is this actually worth 900 plus TT? Like, um, I think going to those events really reminded me that there is a whole ecosystem of people here who support and make this carnival happen for us year in and year out. And they need their flowers, but they also need their own space to enjoy essentially their culture, because it is theirs, and we're descendants of it as first generation, particularly like being my whole family being from Trinidad and me being the first one born outside of the Caribbean and born here. And it's like it's a really hard reckoning to figure out, how do I respectfully participate in my family's heritage when sometimes I go and I feel bad. I feel there's so much like bad talk at times about these foreigners coming in. And I'm like, but am I one of those foreigners? Like
Do I count?
like, do I count? My entire family is from here. Like I may not have my accent anymore. Had to stamp it out in college because nobody can understand me around here. But like, like it's almost like demoralizing because I'm like I'm one of you. I'm like a defender of the culture. I believe that there should be events that are inclusive of all people. The people that it's actually for, the people that make this carnival happen, as well as the people that we're trying to spread it to, both in the diaspora and even beyond. The people who aren't direct descendants of Trinidad. So it's a really hard reckoning. And I think going earlier in January like just made me think more about it too, because again, going to some of the smaller fetes, you just you see the happiness and the freedom that carnival's home, like it's the season again. And it's like then the week of carnival comes and I almost feel like sometimes and it's not to bad talk, but I just feel like there's a shift in the events themselves. Like the energy is just different. Like there's no stush thing to any of the events that we went to in January. It was just pure vibes. People seeing each other, meeting up with friends they haven't seen in a while, or meeting up with friends they saw at a fete last night, but this is their season, so they're out and they're in back-to-back fetes and they keep bunksing up and it's a good time. Versus like when we go during the week of carnival, obviously there's a lot of parties where it's not really catered to a local crowd, and there's a lot more tourists and foreigners and people of the diaspora that are going to these events. So it's a different energy. It's a little wilder at times. Like there's a lot of energy. It's not bad energy. It's all good vibes, but it's just different. It's almost like there is a difference in the overarching, I guess, energy that dictates those parties, whether it's more of this type of music being played. Like you don't hear as much new soca in some of these parties, and you kind of hear the same 5 songs that everybody likes to complain about being played. And there's a lot more people taking pictures and posing and standing up versus like actually just there to have a good time and meet people and see friends again. So I think that's always that was the interesting thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of speak on that, right? So it's okay. I'm like okay with just being the bad guy. But the general consensus is that in January for all the local only events, the vibes are much more genuine and down to earth and a lot more sweet. And by the time like all the foreign people, whether that be Caribbean people in the diaspora from like New York, Florida, or abroad, and by the time all the foreigners come in and they reach their events, the energy becomes like a lot more vain and it becomes like a lot less about like actual love and unity and more so about people just kind of taking photos and showing that they're there with their people and you're not really considered, you know, part of that. You're just more so another person who's there. And I think that when we went for Carnival last year, we kind of saw a lot of that becoming a thing to the point where we're in an event and people are literally standing in line. They're about to fight each other over roti. And I'm
Kid you not.
and
We went
and
to a
and
party that will not be named,
yeah,
but
I don't want to like single people. I don't want to state where I think everybody was from, but it was pretty evident that a majority of people in that event were a lot of people from New York, right? And I mean, I live here. I get it. In New York, like, partying here is different than it is in Trinidad.
there's a lot more of entitlement.
There's a lot more entitlement, there's a lot more aggression. It's not, simple things like stepping on someone's shoes, like especially when they're really drunk, could get you in like a lot of trouble. And I find like what happens is like when a lot of people from here go down to Trinidad, they bring a lot of this like mentality with them. And what happens is they kind of create these weird bubbles that happen at events in Trinidad where like you go to events that used to be like either entirely local Trinidadians or a healthy mix of like local people and people from here. And the vibes was sweet. A lot of people will tell you Ignite and a lot of the Caesar's Army events, a lot of the tribe events, those like I remember looking at videos of them from back in the day. Those used to be all local Trinidadian people. You know what I mean? And now it's very rare that you'll kind of catch a lot of locals in there. They've pretty much become all, like what Trinidadians would consider foreign. And because of that, the energy is different, the vibe is different. Like I said, like and they all party hop to the same events. So because of that, you're always seeing the same people, you're always getting the same DJs. By extension, you're always getting the same music. And I've just found that like because of that, I don't always feel 100% of the love that I kind of used to feel in a lot of the events that I won't really name. But like I just want to make the point that there is very much a clear difference between whether we like it or not. There is very much a clear difference between like local people in Trinidad and people of the diaspora. We may all have similar like values and love for soca music, but at the end of the day, you can clearly tell that we
It's
are.
not just
And
people of the diaspora too.
yeah,
It's people who hear about Carnival and they come down, because I find a lot of people in the diaspora, like people like I would say like me and Ash, like
mhm,
even you, like not directly from the Trinidad diaspora, but still part of the West Indian diaspora. Like, like we have a profound love and respect for where our families come from and the culture in which like we were raised, which, we're not Trinidadian. And there's a lot of debate that, what do we call ourselves? Because when we're here, people look at us and they ask what we are. And, what do you say? We're like, oh, we're American. No, where are you from? America. Where are your parents from? Trinidad. Where's your family from? Trinidad. So your whole family's from Trinidad. Yes. So you're not American. Like,
Oh my God, I hated when people would say that. Like, oh, like I grew up in Texas. I was born and raised here in New York, which is funny because a lot of the time, people are asking me, "Oh, how old were you when you came up here?" I'm like, "Came up here from where?
where?
I'm American. I was born here." But I grew up in Texas where the culture there is just plain black and white, Hispanics that's right there by the border. And a lot of the times, like, they're trying to figure out, oh, like, what are you? And I'm just like, oh, yeah, like, I consider myself black. And they're like, oh, like, isn't your family, like, from Trinidad? I'm like, oh, well, yeah. Oh, so you're not black, you're Trinidadian. And I'm like, it's not a race, like, it's a place, like, but, like, it's funny because, like, I definitely do agree with what you say, like, here, people are like, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm quick to say, "Yeah, I'm Trini and Guyanese." Whereas up there, I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm from New York." Like,
You
like,
have to
I'm
be
so, like, in my
you're in
nutshell.
a box, and then and I see so many people say they hate. Someone wrote apparently, or someone said, I saw someone say recently, someone went to Trinidad and identified themselves as a first generation Trinidadian American, and someone in Trinidad was like, I'm sick of this, like, stop, like, you're not. But it's like, but we are. But if that's not acceptable to people in Trinidad, or people, abroad, outside of America, what do we identify ourselves as? So when we're in America, we're asked, where are you from? What are you? We have to say we're Trinidadian. But then when I go to Trinidad and people say, oh, where you're from? New York. But my entire family's from here. So by extension, by right of blood, which is constitutionally allowed there, I could claim citizenship, and I am. Like, we are from there. So it's just such a conflict, I think, for people in the diaspora, because we're constantly grouped in with this quote unquote foreigners. The foreigners are coming. Yes, we didn't grow up there, but I spent a significant amount of my life there. I've given Caribbean Airlines a lot of money.
Same. Like, since I was in diapers, when Caribbean Airlines was BWE.
Like,
So
literally, when it was BB, I was like so ingrained in Trinidad. I was baptized in Trinidad because my family still went back so often as they were trying to assimilate into America. They still considered Trinidad home enough that they were like, we're not baptizing you here, we're going home. So I grew up calling Trinidad home because my parents always referred to Trinidad as home. They never saw here as home because it wasn't their home. It's just the place that they moved to and live and they migrated to. But it's very conflicting now as a first generation Trinidadian American to then reconcile with that when talking to people here and having to identify yourself, and then being so ingrained in the culture that we were quite literally raised in, even though we didn't live there per se. And then going home to Trinidad and hearing people say, well, you're a foreigner, or these foreigners this, or these foreigners that. And it's like, especially in January of this year I have such a profound appreciation for the people who make mass possible, and for the history of mass in Trinidad and what brought that about, the protests and the rebellion and everything that essentially happened for us to even have the pretty mass that we know today, because it wasn't always pretty mass. It was actually it was traditional mass. And it hurts me to see some of that aspect of our culture being pushed out in the light of commercialization and privatization of Carnival. But at the same time, I don't feel empowered enough to speak on it sometimes, because you have people there telling me, well, you're a foreigner, what do you know? Well, actually, I know quite a lot, because my family's been doing this thing since they were born, and so have I. So it's like, it's a tough reckoning. And I don't speak on it too often because it upsets people here, and then it upsets people there. And then you're ostracized even further from being a part of the culture that you love so much, a culture that is mine, I think, to claim, because I was raised in it, and it's my family's culture. And it will be if I have children, probably not, but if I did have kids, it would be my their culture as well. And you can best believe, when I have nieces and nephews, they will know Kitty's Mass and all of those things, because that is integral to my upbringing. And I feel like it should be integral to theirs, because at the end of the day, we all came from somewhere. And one of the great Trini things that, my family used to tell me growing up is, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. And I think that's one of the most profound things I ever heard, and why I made it my mission in life, as I was growing up, to remain so connected to my culture and my family in Trinidad. And I think going in January, really reinforced that, because I got to see a different side. of mass before mass actually happened. And it's beautiful to see the makings of mass, to see the city come alive and feel that energy that you don't feel here in the diaspora. And I think that's why, when we're talking about foreigners coming into the week of Carnival, we have to be very clear because there's categories now that people don't even recognize. And some of them are very polarizing to people of the diaspora because there are the local folks, the people who live in Trinidad, but there are also people in the diaspora who either migrated to America or are first generation in America whose family are still very integrated into their culture of having grown up in Trinidad and have passed that on to their first generation of children in America. And then there's the actual foreigners, and they say, we say foreigners with such a like a stigma sometimes, but there are people that I've met that genuinely love Trinidad Carnival and genuinely want to come and experience it wholeheartedly, and they want an authentic experience. And then of course there are some that just come for the photos and the hype and they saw it on social media and they wanted to experience it, and that's all good and well too, and nobody's saying don't come. But there are categories, and I think when we talk about it, but then also when people in Trinidad talk about it, we have to be very careful about the polarizing language that we use when talking about the people that are coming to Trinidad Carnival, because honestly, it hurts me. I'm like, so I'm just a foreigner? Like, so, when I'm staying in my grandma's house, but I'm just a foreigner, it's like, it's very, it almost makes you feel like I've lost a piece of myself because it's taking away that ownership of culture or that right to my culture that I feel like, by extension of being raised in it, that I should have. So, I think that's one of the things that I realized just going during a different time of the season is, people were looking at us, and I don't even think they were quick to register that we were foreigners because they weren't expecting foreigners to still be in town after Soca weekend going to some of the parties that we went to. But we were, and I loved them. And it was great to, see people bouncing up with their friends locally and seeing, what life just is like outside of the rush of the week before Carnival, which I've done many times of the year. Like I said, I go all throughout the year, but that palpable energy in the season of Carnival, especially earlier in the season as it's building, is really something different.
Yeah, no, that was like really, really well said. Yeah, and I'll say like, I like for us going in January and going to the events that we went to, I think like so the interesting thing was going to Soka was very different because that was an event, it was the first time I ever went, right? And it's the same thing. Soka is that classic event where, you will always think of like as an event that has like a lot of like local Trinidadians. And this was one of the first times I went in. It was like everybody like that I knew, like specifically like in Queens, New York, all went down. And despite it being what Trinidadians would, I would say, consider like a foreign quote unquote crowd, I still feel like that was an event where I actually had like one of like the greatest feelings of euphoria. Mind you, like yeah, I was like super wasted, as was everybody. But like there was just something about Soka, like just being on top of the cooler, like having the water, and then even though I was there with a lot of my friends from New York, there was just like we all kind of had this understanding of like, oh my God, we're so grateful to be here, and we're all just so grateful to like have this amazing experience together. And that's something I kind of haven't felt for a long time with like going to an event and having a crowd of people that I know here in New York. We go to events like that all the time here, and there are times when we don't like we all still love being there, we have fun, but we don't have that same feeling, you know. And then we went to Soka and like we're there and the whole experience, and it's just like we're all here together, and it's like DNA would come on, we would all hug each other and sing "No Place Like Home," and it was just like wow, like I just feel like really was a different feeling. So that's not to say like not every event you go to that has a quote unquote foreign crowd will be this super vain stush event, because that wasn't my experience at all with Soka. Um, but going to like with Savannah like taking me to events like for example when we went to the Lost Tribe event, right? I found like that was so cool, and going to like Fet Gala, these events that I would never even like know about or think about unless we went there early. And seeing like again like being there and like knowing like yeah there's a handful of people here who are like from New York just kind of coming in, but a majority of the people at these events were like a lot of like just like young local people, you know what I mean? And I just saw that like yeah the vibe was just so interesting there's just this like camaraderie that exists, this understanding of like people just laughing, having fun, like literally like no negative energy whatsoever. It's so interesting, and to me it's so freeing, it's so uplifting. And it like I kind of felt like a little bit more free, and that I was at an event where nobody knew me, because I feel like I could just kind of like authentically be myself and nobody would really give a fuck. You know what I mean? And um I thought that was really cool. So like, and my point in case being like, yeah, I think like this subject of like identity, and what is foreign, what is local, what is this, what is that, all of it, it's all very subjective. And the hard truth and beautiful truth at the same time is that there is no right answer. Everybody's experience will be totally different. Like Ash's experience being Trini and Guyanese firstborn generation in New York versus my experience of being like a first gen Guyanese person, right? Will be two very different experiences, even though we kind of come from the same roots. You know what I mean? And like even when we go to Trinidad, right? All of us, we're all gonna have different experiences, and we same thing. I don't really. It's easy for me when I go to Trinidad to just tell people, yeah, like I'm Guyanese. You know what I mean? I live in New York, but I've been coming to Trinidad for X amount of years, and I'm like really grateful to like be here and work with a lot of like the people that are like play a major role in the culture. And I'm like, that's just my experience. And for everybody it's going to be different. So that's why I think this question of like, what is foreign, or like, do you still consider yourself foreign even though like your entire family's from there and you've been going there forever and practically grew up there? Like these are all questions that are like we're never really going to have a concrete answer to, but like it's so important to talk about it, because it's true, like nobody else really has the right to kind of like label you like a concrete thing. You can go based on technicalities, like, yeah, I have an American passport, so yeah, therefore I am American. But if you look just outside, like, this little blue book that I have, you'll see that, like, I've been coming here forever. Like, I have been to, like, places in Trinidad, that, like, I'm just grateful that I know about the quote unquote white people part of Las Cuevas. Like, like I would have never have known that unless, like, one of my friends who's a local took me there. And I'm just like, yeah, why do they call it that? He's like, nobody ever comes to this side. So I'm like, oh shit, all right, cool. So I'm like, there are lots of things there where I just feel like, nobody can really tell you what you are. I think you kind of have to define it for yourself. And you have to like own it and be comfortable with it. Like I'm okay with owning that, like, yeah, guys, like I'm Guyanese. I have no claim whatsoever to Trinidad. I have experiences that I could talk on. I have amazing people that I've worked with there, but that doesn't make me Trinidadian. But the love that I have for this island, for me, it feels like a second home to me. And people may want to fight me down, left at it, and be like, wow, whatever, like you're Guyanese, like go back to Guyana and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yes, Guyana also has a special place in my heart, but it's a different love, right? There are two different experiences every time I go to Guyana and every time I go to Trinidad. I have two completely different experiences. And I have an equal amount of love for both of them, but the experience that I get in Trinidad will always be different from the experience I get in Guyana. The same way that the experience of being in New York and going to the Soca scene in New York will be totally different from everything else. So, I don't know. I just feel like on that topic of like identity, like, yeah, going in January definitely like shed a lot more insight to me, because it's just all things that I would have never learned about or seen had I just kept going like at the same time that I would always go. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely January is nice. Big up Lost Tribe, and Val. For putting together such a phenomenal Fat Yard is an amazing event. If anybody is ever in town for it, if you play with Lost Tribe, you obviously know about it. But if you're ever in town for it and not playing with Lost Tribe, highly, highly recommend it. And same with Vet Gala, Thrown by Life events. Life events, they've been doing this, I forget for how long, but I've always wanted to go to one of their events, never in town, and they did a phenomenal job. Like it's such a unique concept. The sense of getting dressed up specifically, like as if you're on a red carpet to go to a fete. That was so unique that of course I jumped all over. I'm like, I love to dress up, so I there.
Yo,
But
they had these Queens Park swizzles that were
well, yeah,
bossing. Yo, I had like
at both
4 or 5 of them.
events.
I was like at the end of the bed, I was like all
It was
dressed in
his
these fancy clothes, and I'm like, Savannah, Savannah.
So that was his
like
first
stumbling out a little
Queen's
bit.
Park Swizzle for sure.
Yo, did they have that? Was that like a thing when Angostura sponsored some of the events in February? Did they have like a so Angostura at some of the events we went to, like Fet Yard and Fet Gala? They make this like cocktail with white oak, and it's called a Queen's Park Swizzle. I think it's made with like white oak and maybe
I
like
don't know what I gotta
some
look it
mint
up.
leaves, and they put bitters. And I forgot like what chaser they put inside, but it's like actual like mixologists that make it. So they have like gloves on. They're doing everything super measured. They take like a little stick like made of bamboo and they mix the drink up, and they like take their time to like actually make you a proper cocktail, and it's so good. I don't know if like they had it at the events that you went to.
So I didn't. Well, at all the events that I went to, I was just getting the same thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would
Yeah. What's
just-
your preferred drink?
It's
So-
actually Demerara rum in it.
Really? It's not white oak?
So these are the ingredients for it.
It can be because it's an Angostura station.
I mean, yeah, but they make rum too, you know.
Nah,
It's-
really?
I mean, white oak is white rum, but it's just a different kind, I think.
That's interesting. And it's the Queen's Park Swizzle. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, it's what you were shooting. It was a dark rum. It wasn't. It's whatever they were giving you. So he had a few shots in addition to the swizzle. So
Yes, it was it. Oh my God, you just
You're like,
unlocked.
it's all coming back.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
unlocked,
like,
she
it
unlocked the
wasn't
drunk
white oak.
memory. No, she literally unlocked the drunk memory. I was like, oh shit, I drank that and I was like, yeah, what's this kind of like dark, spicy, licorice kind of taste?
yeah, they usually use like a white. They could use a white rum, but they usually use like this like gold.
Is it an
rum.
Angostura dark rum?
Of course. Well, it's at the
That's what I was
Angostura
gonna
bar,
say.
so
Okay,
they
okay,
wouldn't
okay,
use
okay.
anybody else.
No, you had me thinking they're using El Dorado. I was like, they're using a Guyanese rum and
No,
an
no, no.
Angostura
I-
drink,
maybe, yeah.
which I think would be busting too. But like, wow, all right, interesting.
So like,
Yeah.
okay, I played Mass with Tribe, and Tribe had like trucks with Angostura. They had like different like, I guess their mixed drinks that you could try. I only tried one and it was really good, but I had to like kind of like pace myself because like, one, I didn't eat breakfast. Two, the sun was like blazing hip hop and R&B, and then it's just like I'm drinking this and it's going down fast and I'm getting lightheaded. And I'm like, all right, girl, you've only been out here for like an hour and a half. We got all day to go. Like, you need some water. So, but they were really good, and I thought it was like it was really nice to see. Like, it was really different, you know. So like, shout outs to them. Like, also never disappoint because my go-to drink is white oak with
yeah.
coconut water. If there's bitters, you know, just like a splash of bitters on top, you know, that'll always do
Were
it.
you always drinking that, or was it like when you started drinking on the Soca Analyst? Because for Gel, his first time having it, I think, was actually like when he did a podcast episode before he was like part of DSA and he just joined, and I was like, Gel, you gotta try this. You gotta try this. So I don't remember like if I had showed it to you, if you were, it was just something like I was just curious if you were always
So like
drinking
I
it.
feel like you guys like introduced me to that because like before, like, yeah, like my family, like there's white oak in the house and stuff like that, but I would be like, ew, rum, like no, like I don't want that. And then like, you know, the more involved I got with DSA, you guys are like, yeah, white oak, and I'm just like, all right, like let's try it.
White
So-
Oak hasn't sponsored him yet. It's
Yo,
hilarious.
for real,
because,
like it's literally like white oak. In the future, we're gonna get that sponsorship. I'm letting you know because we've been drinking this since 2016. You know what I
even
mean?
before I grew up. I mean, I shouldn't say how long I've been drinking White Oak, but
Nah, you're Trinidadian. It's fine.
should not say how long. But that's just like white and Sprite. Oh yeah.
Yeah, can't go wrong with white oak. If it's not white oak, then give me a Carib. We're good to go.
Yeah, she was telling me earlier. So she went out with her family, and she said like literally like half the table. Nobody can see the table here, but she said half of it was Stag and the other half was Carib, and she doesn't
Isn't
drink
that one of the most
Stag.
beautiful sights? Just the colors
Like,
of the
literally,
bottles.
I have to show you the video because I literally thought to myself, okay, like I'm obviously Team Carib and my cousins are Team Stag. And I'm just looking, I'm like, damn, I'm really fucking throwing them back. Like here in the US, I drink a Corona like 1 or 2 maybe tops.
Ready for
But
bed.
there, it was like, we started like 10 in the morning and like 3 o'clock I looked at it, I'm like, I'm hungry. And then we ate and we just, you know, kept it
Kept
going.
going.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So Savannah and I were talking about that. I'm like, you know, when we went to go hang out with our friend Jono, like big up to Jono, her in case you guys don't know, amazing videographer in Trinidad, one of my really awesome friends. And yeah, like we went to the beach and you know we packed like 6
So-
beers, like what, like
Yeah, so
like
this was
each.
actually probably
for each
one
of
of the
us.
highlights of our trip, and it just goes to show like when you're in Trinidad outside of the the peak carnival season, it really is a different vibe because you could just it's a vacation. You can relax a little bit more. So that's what we did. It was like the second to last day before we left. And we were just like, it was the day after Pan. We were all a little mashed up from Pan, which we'll talk about, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yo, Ash, that's one thing you
Pan
would
in
love.
the North Stand
You
semifinals.
have to go to Pan semifinals in the North Stand. We're going to get into it after the story, but I got to tell you all about
Well, let's
semis.
just get into it now.
Can we?
Since we're-
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So this was the weekend. I think it was our last weekend in town, perhaps. And yeah, it was. And we went to Fet Yard. We went to Fet Gala. Amazing time. On Saturday, went had some great roti with my aunt in East, and then came Sunday. So Sunday was just a amazing day. I love Pan. Anytime we go to Pan finals and Pan semis this year, it's such a vibe to see all these people out supporting their favorite Pan, their Pan band. And everything is just it's a different energy, right? It's just seeing people come together in the stands just to have a lime, particularly in the North Stand where people do go to lime.
But before we get into the vibe of the Pan North Stands, I just want to make like a really important clarification, especially for me, like not being Trinidadian and then going to Pan in the past. Right. So in the past, like Savanah and I have gone to Pan finals, right?
That's the only time we were there.
It's the only time we were there. And I was like, yo, Savanah, like I want to do something like a little bit like cool and cultural. Like,
we have to go to Pan.
And yeah, she's like, let's go to Pan. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we get the tickets. We go to Pan, which is in the grandstand, which, for those of you guys don't know, if you're standing on the Savanah stage, I guess facing in the Savanah.
Don't talk to me about
I don't know which direction.
I'm not gonna,
but anyway, long story short, there's
East, West, North.
There's a grandstand and then there's the North Stand,
Stand,
right? And generally speaking, in the grandstand during Pan finals, right, the Pan players face you, so it's like a row of bleachers and they face you, right? You're in the North Stand, you usually get the back of the Pan band during the finals, right? So it's cool, like
you get the back of them during semis too. You get the back of them always.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's how it is, right?
They're always facing the grandstand.
They're always facing the grandstand. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. It's it's generally like a lot more older people. It's not like it's very quiet.
They have chairs. You sit down. You could,
it's very low energy in terms of crowd. And
they have energy.
No, I mean they have, but it's what people would consider boring. Let's be real, right? People.
It's what people your age
when we
consider.
asked people in Trinidad, and we told them we go to Pan finals, they're like, no, boy, that's boring. Which I like again has its own crowd, right? And I won't get into that, right? Because I enjoyed Pan finals just from a musical standpoint, like. With the year we went for like when Outs and Bad came out was that 2022, like the quarantine carnival.
Yeah.
And I was up in it. I was jumping up and down in my seat.
And people were too.
Yeah.
So, it's just different vibes, right? Like there's people
vibes.
who are diehard Pan fans and they go for semis and they go for finals and they have a blast in the grandstand.
So for context, right? Savannah's like, yo, we're going to go to Pan semis in the North Stands. And I'm here thinking like, yeah, no, it's no problem. I already know what like this is going to be like. I'm thinking like, yo, we all going to go sit down in the chairs and have it. And
he had
then,
no idea what he was in for.
I had no idea what I was going in for. Yo, we get there, right? And this shit, like, imagine if the entire country came together for, which I'm sure people in Trinidad imagine, and they're going to be like, bro, this is normal. What's wrong with you? But imagine all
excited.
the people come together and it's just one giant lime. Like everybody's up, everybody's dancing.
So there's no place to sit, right?
There's no
people bring chairs, but people also bring. It's like going to a barbecue, right? But almost as if you didn't have the barbecue ready in your backyard, so you have to bring the barbecue with you, essentially.
Yeah.
So they bring tables, they bring their coolers, they bring their trays of food. They bring, if they want to bring their little sternums to keep the food hot, they do that. But that's doing the most.
This is what it looks like when we first got there. It's just this giant place, and everybody brings tables and everything like that. And we ended up by chance just through a mutual liming like with Kes and his crew and the entire band.
Lisa for inviting us.
Yeah, big up to Lisa and and Kes's sister for organizing. And yo, I was just there, and I was like,
that was all happenstance, but
and that was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. And then everybody's drinking, having fun. It gets better and better and better. And then my favorite part of it, aside from the Pan, was that they have this incredible giant rhythm section that plays in between while Pan is setting up and everything.
Can I tell you, I love a tassa. Oh my God.
Yeah. This was just on another level. Like, and I just stood there on my phone. I just recorded because I was like, for like 5 minutes straight, I'm like, I never want to forget this moment and like how
I'm waiting to
incredible.
take him to like a cricket in Trinidad, like a cricket game.
Yeah, I'm just gonna turn the sound on real quick.
I always wanted to be the person sitting on the big drum. You know, I feel that for me.
Yeah, yeah. I could see you. I could see you doing that too.
So, yeah, and it was just one of those events. I found random people will come up to Savannah and be like, hey, gal, like, you're so beautiful. And, random people will come up to us to like random people on a Juve band. They were like, hey guys, come on, let's take a drink, let's take a shot. And I was like, you're just the same thing, like just this genuine love of everybody who
It's
was
a vibe,
there.
it's not like there's sections, nobody's roped off, everybody is
Yeah.
just there. Like I said, by happenstance, we ended up with the particular group we were with. And again, we were invited by, a good friend, Lisa, amazing person, very sweet and, just welcoming. And she, got the tickets for us. She invited us to come along. And we just, it was just so nice to be there, meet her friends, and just, see everybody having a good time, have a drink, singing DNA. So there came a point. So what they typically do during Pan is before, as the bands are like coming on and off the stage, they will usually play on this, over the speakers, the song of the next band that's, about to play Pan. So one of the bands was going to play DNA, but I think they were taking some time to get on the stage. So on a loop, they literally played DNA over the speakers
Over
5 times, just the song, as the band was getting set up to actually play DNA on the steel pan. And we sang DNA 5 If they played it 10 times, we would have sang it 10 times. The whole North Stand just sang DNA word for word every time it played. And it just kept going. And we were just like, again? Okay. And we kept singing. And it was just that feeling and sense of solidarity. And that moment too, I said Road March. I was like, I already knew Road March, but that was like, for me, I was like, this had to be Road March. Like there's no if, and, or but. But just that moment of being in the stands, people are there cheering on their steel pan bands, but you're also just surrounded by, friends and friends of friends, and everybody's drinking, not getting wasted, just having a drink, liming. It's all very like chill. People are eating, sharing food, bumping into people they haven't seen, meeting people, they only saw, on social media, or, a friend from long time that they haven't seen in years. Just that energy is just irreplaceable. It's the energy that you find on the road sometimes, just in the North Stand during Pan semis. And if you have an appreciation for culture and you have an appreciation for Pan semis is a place to be.
I know why Ash would love pan semis, because Marshall always comes out with the Siparia Deltones because he's from Siparia,
Well, that's
and he
if-
always
yeah.
waves the
Yeah.
flag for them. But to like really and truly have the energy of pan semis, to be in the North Stand and be around so many different people, like most of which were all strangers, and to have all these strangers as one people sing "We Home,"
No place like home.
sing DNA, to have all these strangers sing DNA together, all like perfect unison, harmonizing and feeling that energy. There really was no sensation for me like that while I was there.
I went ballistic. I sang it every
I
time at the top of my lungs.
took a
See
video.
his videos.
Ash, you gotta see it.
No place like home. Home.
It was like that for 10 minutes.
So what's funny? On my flight coming back home, coming back to New York, they were playing like music in the airport and stuff. Literally DNA plays. Everyone at my gate, like, it's just like kind of like turned down, but everyone's singing it and kind of like swaying it. In my head, I'm just like, damn, this is really it. Like, I'm going back to New York.
There was no song. DNA is going to live on as it should, and I hope it does, as the It's Carnival of this generation. Like, there is no song that I've seen that's had quite the response. I was telling Ash earlier, like, I was one of the fourth people, I think, to listen to it when it dropped, at least per the numbers on the streaming platform I was using. And I was just like, I came out the shower and I was like, this is a banger. I came out, I was in a towel, I was soaking wet, and I went to Rich, who was working by the table, and I said, this is Road March. I said, I didn't know it then. Like, I was just, it was just a statement. But I said, whatever this is, whatever he put in the song, this is it. And it's like, I'm like, we got to get ready. I'm like, we're not going to Trinidad for another 3 months, but I'm like, we got to get ready. And we're just like, I'll get ready just now. Like, I'll get excited when I'm there. I'm like, no, get excited now because this is it. This is the song. He's like, I'll get excited when I'm there. I'm like, you don't get it though. Like, this is it. Like, this is the song. Like, we have to get excited now because the song is here and we have to get ready now. Trinidad is basically tomorrow. I said, DNA, what else do you need? I'm like, this could be the only song that releases for the season, and it's enough to make me run mad in Port of Spain. And it kind of became that song.
Look, let's be real. There's a lot of great songs this year, but there is nothing like DNA.
I sing that song like a mad woman.
There was nothing like DNA this year.
Well, maybe there's a miracle.
I love DNA. Actually, in fact, the first time I heard it, I kind of knew that was gonna be Road March. But then Bungie just came and just
the contract. Okay.
Yep.
And literally, like, when I heard it here, I'm really a strong believer in soca. When you hear it, it depends on the environment you hear it in.
Mhm.
When you hear it in your headphones and you're at the gym, you're like, okay, like, yeah. When you hear that shit on a speaker
Mhm.
and that bass hits your chest, literally, I felt like every time they played Carnival Contract, I wanted to fucking lift the truck up my damn self. Like, I was just going crazy. But what's crazy is I felt the same way when I heard DNA. So it was just like, imagine these songs just going back to back, 10 minutes straight. I'm going hard. Like, I'm just like, I don't know which one to pick, but fucking we're here. Like, we're here, you know? So, like, love DNA, but I do love Carnival Contract too. Another song that I felt like, if had it dropped a little sooner, it could have potentially been a striker for Road March. Miracle by Kes.
100%.
100%.
The buildup of that, it's just like you're building up, and then finally the bass drops, and you're like, oh my God, it was just amazing.
No, Miracle really is like, and we had a long conversation with Jono about it, but Miracle really was a monster. It was such a unique song. The music video was one of the most beautiful music videos I've seen in soca, literally in the past 10 years. I kid you not. It was that incredible. And I think you're totally right. I think like had Kes dropped Miracle earlier, I don't know the exact situation. I don't know if it's like the inspiration came to him just a little too late, and I don't know like how the project came together. I don't know if it was a last minute thing or if it's something
I think
that
it was a late. I think it was just overall a late one.
It could have been. We would have to talk to somebody like on the team to know more. But like essentially, yeah. Like I just think had it came out a little bit earlier, it would have definitely picked up a lot. It's funny that like just on the topic of Road March, because when we first got there, my picks for Road March, believe it or not, it was actually gonna be like Nyla and Lyrical, Best Self. That was like actually like my first one. And then Carnival Contract was probably like number 3 for me. I kind of was like, I like Best Self, then DNA, and then Carnival Contract. And then as time just kind of kept going on, and then especially when I heard Bungie perform it at Fat Gala, he actually got the biggest forward at Fat Gala with Carnival Contract. The crowd, same thing, just erupted. And you could just feel the steam. And it was the same thing. Like when I first got to Trinidad, I was like, Carnival Contract was a song I just kind of bumped to and was like, whatever. But then the more I heard it, I was like, yo, this is a monster song. This is a monster song. I'm like, I'm like, Bungie, wow, this is incredible. And it just kind of kept growing on me and growing on me and growing on me. And then it got to a point where I was like, I kind of wanted Carnival Contract to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it kept growing. And then same thing, Miracle dropped. And at first I was like, yeah, Miracle, this is a great song. But same thing, I wasn't really feeling it. And then I just kept hearing it more and more and more and more. I kept listening to it. And I was just like, but when Kes performed it at CIC was when it just dropped and it got no forward.
I think it was at Soca though that you felt like
right
after.
Yes.
Then we heard it again.
Yeah, we heard it again in a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Different systems. CIC and Soca, 2 very different energies. Right, but he introed with it at CIC, which was literally just only the night before Soca, and I was kind of like, okay, like the intro is cool, but I was kind of like whatever. But then when he did it again at Soca, and he also, I think because it was a track show, it was just him. he also went really hard with his songs. He did like a lot of the high tempo songs.
Yeah,
Didn't
his performance at Soca was
it was
beautiful.
great. It was
It was
amazing.
you literally. I was telling Ash, I was like, when that song played, you just felt like we were in church, like it was a choir, like you felt like that water coming down and he was baptizing you all over again. Like it was also trying to drown us, but you just felt like you were being baptized in like this love of like people and unity and country and culture, and it was so beautiful. And I think this season in general for Soca, I know there's a lot of opinions on it, but I feel like there was a lot of strong-ish contenders for Road March, more so than like years past. Like it was a very clear race last year between Come Home and Hard Fat. I think this year we were actually really lucky to actually get quite a few that could have been contenders. There was, of course, the Anxiety, which I didn't fully see or envision for the stage. There was Best Self, with which both of us really loved, and I felt the vibes for it. Like I think it's a great song. A lot of people I think felt it was too similar to Come Home in terms of like the build and progression. But I think the Carnival Day, like you and I were talking about, that Patrice and voice had
Yeah,
potential.
I feel like I love Patrice. She's another one of my top 5 artists. I feel like I love Anxiety from the time I heard it. I loved it, but I don't feel like that was the song. And this is just my silly opinion. I don't feel like that was the song that she should have pushed for Road March. I feel like Carnival Day with her and voice, that was more her
Mhm.
Road March contender. Because that was really a really good song. That I feel like that was a monster song as well. But I'm upset that it didn't get much forward and much play as it should have
I'm not
gotten.
sure what the decision was. There was a lot that happened, with the loss of her fiance earlier, in the month essentially. But I felt like that was the one they were going to push. And then it kind of pivoted because Anxiety, because I think honestly, because of the sentimental value of it, because it was
Yeah.
just such a poignant song at the for her, but also just us realizing what had happened in her life at that time. I think Anxiety really took precedence and resonated more in the hearts of the people, that it just pivoted from pushing Carnival Day, which is a shame. But Anxiety is a beautiful song, really, really, sadly relevant to what Patsy had to go through this season. And Carnival Day is a monster voice in of itself. He had some quiet monsters this season too.
He did.
And I'm always a fan of voice. He does great stuff every year. But I think, between that, the Best Self, and then of course the DNA, which had a long season of just pure forward, well deserved for Tasia. Like I cannot emphasize how happy I am that he got his flowers by winning Road March. But I also have to big up Bungie, because he's the Viking. I love him. I loved him for years, even the years where he was quieter, and I felt like, where is he? Like, why isn't he putting out more stuff? And I was listening to his stuff all through the years, but I just felt like it wasn't getting enough forward or enough recognition. So to see him kind of like, win with Road March last year and come back into the Road March race this year with Contract, I actually think Bungie, more than a lot of other artists, really has kind of mastered or really understands people in a way that some of the other artists don't. Bungie knows how to crowd control, him and Fan. And Fan, I could do a whole podcast on, because, I know Fan gets a lot of fight down, but Fan's my girl. I love Fan. Like, don't even get me started on Fan. And she had some good songs this year too, that, I think played a fair amount, but I would have liked to hear some of them more. But just getting back to Bungie, he really understands, both of them do. But with Contract, he really studied and he understood which one to push, because he had another great song that I thought would have been good for the road, and for the stage. I believe it was called Today. And a lot of people,
thinking
a lot of people were like, why didn't you push that one? And he actually gave his rationale on Twitter, I think just yesterday or day before, saying he watched and he kind of studied and saw where the trajectory was going. I don't want to quote him because I don't have it in front of me per se, but he knows how to build, right? And I have to give him his forward that he saw the direction Contract was going. He saw the way it was resonating with the people, and he stuck to it and he built, whether it was through the radio, whether it was just, consistently going to fets and putting it out there and, speaking to the people and explaining to them, the importance of, signing your contract and that we have a contract with Carnival, and then finally giving us an action by saying, put your name, sign your contract on the stage when you cross it. I was like, there's an idea. Like that is an idea. Like, why haven't we done that before?
There's a lot of people I heard this year, given the success of Carnival Contract, who literally use the lyrics of that song like as a verb now, where people are like, instead of saying, yeah, I'm coming next year, they just say, yeah, my contract's renewed. And it's just a slogan now
I
for
used
like,
it.
you're coming back.
Every caption you saw after Carnival Tuesday, contract signed and renewed, contract signed, contract sealed and delivered. And I'm like, DNA, we came, there was no place like home, but we also got our contract
one of the
signed.
things that I said, I was like, yeah, I'm signing my contract. I'm just not happy that the contract fees keep going up, though.
The contract fees, the costumes, accommodations, the flights, the fares.
We need to renegotiate the terms of that contract altogether.
Yes. And I mean, that was also something that we were talking about as well. And I mean, I don't know, there's two important things I want to talk about. Like, the one is obviously like, what we were talking about before with like the prices of Carnival and like just like the ethics of it and like who is it for and who it excludes. But before I jump right into that, because we're still on the topic of like Road March and just watching these artists like get, the forward that they deserve, I want to ask like a very controversial question. I'm not going to take a stance on it, but I don't know, maybe I will. We'll see. But I want to ask a very controversial question, which is that given that Machel has kind of taken a back seat essentially from 2020 to now, do you think that with Machel kind of being a lot more behind the scenes and not really in the spotlight, that's one of the reasons that other artists have been given their opportunity to shine?
See, I'm afraid to answer this because automatically my answer is going to be biased.
No, it's definitely not. Just whatever you think.
I honestly don't know because I don't want to take away from the art because DNA, Carnival Contract, those were monster songs. Like, those are songs that, like I said, like, I was kind of like in the middle. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I love Carnival Contract, but I love DNA. Like, I'll be fine either way it goes. So it's just like, I don't know. I can't say, like, I can't call it.
Yeah, I would say love Machel. Like, we have to respect the work and the foundation and the legacy that he's built for himself, but also the way that he's paved for Soca. And I would say to an extent some of the younger artists. I would say I think him sitting out this season does play a role. I'm going to be honest. Machel is a legend. He's a giant. He's an icon. Carnival without Machel, as we saw very early in the season, everybody dragged him. Seriously, you need a master's in Carnival Studies. And I understand his reasoning for doing it, because if I could get my master's in Carnival Studies tomorrow, I would start school.
Wait, oh my God, is that what he's getting his
That
master's
is, yeah,
in?
that is what
Do they offer that in New York? Because I'd be like,
Probably not.
As far as I know,
I need to sign up
I
for
don't know
that.
who's teaching it in New
it's
York.
something that we would all like to have, right?
I'll teach the class.
Maybe that could be something we advocate for, because I see the value in doing it, because me, as someone who wants to who constantly, like I said, doesn't feel like I could speak on the culture because so many people fight down, like, were you born there, this, that, whatever. Being someone who wants to feel like they have that right to contribute to the culture and speak on it authentically without offending the masses, as is so commonly and easily done these days, I respect what he's doing. Like, I think even though he's literally the legend of Soca, the king of Soca, I think what he's doing, is a lesson to us all that you could never know too much. He's quite literally the freaking king of Soca, but he's still going back to learn more about our culture.
He had a PhD before he got his master's.
Honorary, yes. But, I think that just sets a tone and example for all of us to follow. I think Machel's in a league of his own. He has a plan and a vision of his own, and he's legacy building, and he doesn't need to consult or ask any of us permission to take a season behind the scenes. And his pivot back to Calypso, I think, is just all part of his own grand design and plan for himself. Maybe not one he even envisioned at the start of the season, maybe one he did. But either way, him pivoting back into like Calypso Monarch, I think, and doing his masters, I think, is a testament to the fact that you could never know too much. There's always more to learn. And for the king of Soca to be as humble as to say, I'm taking a season off from this per se, like, I'm not performing and not putting a Soca, I'm gonna I have to focus on my studies. I think that's respectable. You know, we can drag him all we want, and we can make fun of him, you know, coming out on the road when he has
I
homework
would
to do.
never
Well, everybody else could drag him,
Everybody on
and I
Twitter.
say off with those people's heads. Just kidding.
there's a lot of people because
Bad people.
he got, you know, but it's all loving, right? Because we all respect him at the end of the day. I don't think anybody wishes Uncle Marshall a failing grade in his masters. But I think, you know, we need to look deeper than that and really recognize what he's doing for himself is maybe something more of us should do. We really need to invest in our industry that is Carnival and look to see, you know, how do we empower the next generation? How do we educate them on the history that is Carnival? And going back to do something as, you know, seemingly as simple as a degree in Carnival studies, I'm sure is actually a lot more in depth and, you know, relevant than we even realize. And I would love if I ever have, if, you know, they want to put an online course so I can participate, I would love to, because
too.
I would pay my tuition. I would come because I think it's so valuable. You know, the more, again, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. And I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's learning more about the origins of, you know, where this all came from. And as the king of Soca, to say he doesn't know enough, he wants to know more. I think we can all take a lesson from that. And to answer your question, did him taking a backseat open up the way for somebody else this year? I think it did. You know, I think we become a little colorblind. We put on those rose colored glasses where he's concerned, and that's not saying it's not well deserved, because he is the king of Soca. So quite honestly, he does put out monster songs. He knows the formula. His performances, you know, that's arguably how he won Calypso Monarch. It's not just a song, which some argued wasn't as good as the others, but nobody can deny his performance was incredible. And that's just something that as a seasoned performer, as someone who's been doing this since too young to Soca, he knows the formula. He knows how to perform. He knows how to engage a crowd and captivate a crowd and push a song, even a song that maybe some would say isn't that good. So did him taking a backseat this year open up the way and give airway to some of the next generation? I do think it did, you know, and that's not to put down the younger generation. Oh, Marshall needs to be out of the way for Tasia to win DNA. Absolutely not. I think with the forward and the power that Tasia had behind DNA, which you could just feel in your bones every time it plays, and the reaction that it gathers from people, I think he would have won anyway. I would strongly like to believe that, because of the power that song had on its own. And I don't think, you know, a Marshall song could have detracted from that. I don't think it should have. And if it did, you know, I'm sure there would have been many conversations afterward about the fairness of Road March if Marshall did drop one and won, with DNA also being out and with Carnival contract also being out. But I don't think that's the case. I like to believe that we can we can align ourselves and not necessarily have these very rose-colored bias glasses on when Marshall isn't a season. Do I think he contributes a lot and adds to a season? Of course. He's the king of Soca. You know, if he's performing anywhere, it's going to be a vibe. But I don't think his lack of presence, you know, necessarily, you know, ruined the season either. The younger generation, as well as the vets, Bungie, they carried the season just fine for us. And I think, you know, that's not knocking Marshall. You can come back next year, you know.
Please come back next
People
year.
were really hoping he was going to run out on stage with Destra the way he did at Hyatt Lime the year before.
Oh, at CIC, I mean, when Destra performed, I felt it in my chest. I'm like, he's coming. I think he might come.
And
Like
then
she was
Destra
singing.
said, Destra was literally paused on stage and she goes, He's
He's
not
not
coming.
coming, Alia.
He's not here. He's not. And everyone just went, oh.
She's like, oh yeah, you can calm down. He's not coming. And she said it very kindly. And I was like, all right. Like, are you sure?
It's like she read everybody's minds. But
I mean, the build for Shake the Place, and I love that song. If you want to get into last year, I love Shake the Place. I really do think the two of them deserved a little more love for that one, because it's a banger. I love that song. It wiles me up for sure. But yeah, I think, you know, again, I think very soon, and this year was an example, in 2023, last year was an example that we can't necessarily rely on Marshall for Carnival. There is a lot of people who do feel his absence strongly during the season. And that was very early on in the season where the Soca was taking a bit longer to build. But look at everybody had an amazing carnival. I've only seen, for the most part, there are some comments and feedback and things, that could have gone better. But for the most part, I heard everybody say they had a blast on the road. Best carnival since 2020. Ash can testify. We can testify when we were there. It was a vibe, and that's not saying we didn't miss Uncle Marshall, but he was there. He was just there in a different capacity, and he won Calypso Monarch. And again, a lot of people said maybe the song wasn't that great, whatever, but performance-wise, it was there, and he won it rightfully, and that's how it goes. And if he comes back to sing Soca next year, I'm sure we will welcome him with open arms, as we always would, because it's Marshall. But I don't think he will necessarily make or break a season. And this year shows that a season can stand on its own without him. Do we love him? Well, should we always respect him? Yes. But should we also respect what he's doing right now? Pursuing his Masters of Carnival Studies? Yes. And I think regardless of whatever path he takes for the next cycle of Trinidad Carnival to come in 2025, I think Soca is in good hands and we'll be okay.
Yeah, no, I mean the question of like was Marshall sitting out of the season? Did it give other artists a time to shine? Um I think yes, but I don't think it was like an intentional thing. I think it really I think the public really kind of determines things, and I do like kind of agree with you said, right? When it's like when Marshall is there, is he purposely trying to stifle young artists? No, because it's been proven and it is a fact that he's done a lot for younger artists in terms of giving them a platform on Marshall Monday, collaborating with them, doing songs with them, you know, really helping. I do genuinely think Marshall does help put younger artists on the map in ways that he can, and in ways that also work for him and his brand as well. Um, I do feel that because he sat things out. I think the public was like, okay, we don't always have to look straight at Marshall. Now we can also now recognize the public chose to finally be like, yeah, we're gonna acknowledge that we have
Yeah.
other talents out there, and it was amazing to see them fully embrace it. So
And they've done it before. It's not the first season Marshall hasn't won a road march.
correct.
2017 was a big upset. And I was on the road that year, and I saw it. I saw it happen in real time in that season. It's not the only season. Like Stage Gone Bad, 2020. I love that song. Cass, if you release it again, I will make it road march again because I love that song. And of course, this year, and there's been other years, but I do, I agree with you. I don't think Marshall stifles younger artists. I think we are just so in tuned as a public to be, we're big fans. I don't know anybody that's not a huge fan of Marshall that loves Soca. And, if you can't respect what he's done for the genre of Soca, then you don't really respect Soca in that sense, because he has done a lot, and what he's done for Soca has really been unparalleled.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people who feel ways about Marshall, everybody will always love and Marshall's music. And again, it always goes back to the thing of that I always try to say, where it's we really have to be mindful, all of us, of differentiating artists as people and artists as artists, because there's a lot of people who don't like Soca artists as people, but they love their music, right? There's a lot of people who may not like Marshall Montano as a person, but they can never deny and say that he's not an incredible artist.
yeah.
You can't find a single person
And more
that
than
will
any
say
other
that.
artiste out there, Marshall's persona as an artiste, I don't know him personally. You might better than I do. But I don't know him personally, but his persona as an artiste and who he is as a person, I think is strongly linked. You wouldn't have Marshall the artiste, the king of Soca, if he wasn't so ingrained and in tuned into being that as a person. So I think he's different in a totally different league than so many other artists, just because of that sheer passion and the work that he's put into it. And we had that conversation with
Yeah.
Jono too
Yeah.
at length, that there are few things that set artists apart, because they're all phenomenal writers and they're all phenomenal performers to an extent, and they're all in respective leagues of their own, just at different levels, right? All trying to get to the next level. And I think the gold standard kind of is Marshall at this point in time, because there is no one like him, right, Ash?
Yeah, I know. I just want to I
And
want to bring up one important point too, which is that you and I have spoken about it before, right? But one of the things that makes Marshall so unique as an artist is not just the quality of his music. It's not just that he has a formula, right? Because he was already an enigma before he was what he was today. And one of the things about him is that he is obsessed with always becoming better. And to a point where it makes him appear like a crazy person, you know? Um, he is just obsessed with always pushing limits, always going past what you thought was humanly possible. And he does that to himself to the point where I feel like he goes through things that we could never comprehend. To be at that level of hitting perfection and then being like, no, I'm going even further than that. It's not something that you find in a lot of people. And I think it is one of the things that makes Marshall Montano so unique. Not only that he expects that for himself, but he expects that for everybody that works around him. You know, the few times that I did work for him, I saw that firsthand, and he expected the same of me to do things that I thought were impossible. There are times when I've done a couple things with him which I literally did not think I could do at all, and then afterwards I did it, and I was like, "Yo, did I really just do an event, stay up straight, not sleep, and then do the next one and stay up straight, not sleep, and get everything that he needed?" And until I did a job with him, I never had done something like that before. I was really young. I was like fresh out of college. I didn't really 100% know what I was doing. And then to this day, I look back on that first instance where I'm like, wow, like I've never really met someone or know of someone who just demands perfection. And it's needed. Like I get it. A lot of people say, it's harsh, it's critical, it's this and that, but I get it. Like I just really do feel like sometimes if you want to be the best, it takes not just being good, you have to obsessively be the best.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I hear a lot of people really big up his work ethic, and it really is something that can't really be put into words. And that's why the people that are on his team are like kind of also like the best of the best. Like the dancers that he has on his team, so phenomenally talented, the people who do his visuals, so incredibly talented. You're doing things at the absolute top of the level of the industry in Trinidad and Tobago when you work with him. Um, and I just, I just feel like that has to be acknowledged, and a lot of people need to see that and respect that, because once you see and respect that, it then follows that you understand some of the other things that people who say they don't like him. It makes those people understand, okay, this is why Marshall Montano is Marshall Montano, because if he doesn't push this hard to be the best, then who will? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's one of the things that I just really love and respect about him, and I see him in a different light because I see that mentality, and I understand like this is what he does to be the best. Are there other ways? Maybe. I mean, I don't really know. The thing is, like, American artists like go even 10 times harder and sometimes in their routine and what they do, and like nope, we just say like, oh yeah, it's what it takes to be the best, but like, why don't people acknowledge that with Marshall too? You know what I mean? Like people will see like A-list celebrities here trip off left and right, and they're like, yeah, well, that's what it takes to be the best. But like, why do we not say the same thing about him? You know what I mean? And so I just think there's a lot to be said there and acknowledged. So yeah.
It really warms my heart that I didn't have to come to his defense all on my own. You guys made beautiful points. As his smallest in size.
She's like, big up, you guys.
Yes, as smallest in size, but I am truly like his biggest fan. Like when he did his show, not this past Labor Day, but the Labor Day before, his first show in the Barclays. Literally, I broke my foot that summer. I was there front and center on my feet all night. Well, on my one good foot all night. I went home, my foot was swollen. I was in pain for like the next 3 days, but it was so worth it because it's just like he went through all his eras, like Too Young to Soca, Band of the Year, all the way through Soca Kingdom. And like literally, like I feel like at one point my dad is looking at me, he's like, sit down. And I'm like, sit down? Sit down? How about you stand up? How about that? Like, So it was just like to hear like you guys' like opinion. Like I swear I didn't want to like be the one to be like, well, duh, like he made way for the other artists to get, some shine. I didn't want to be ugly like that because I know it's so easy for someone like me to like sound biased, but it's just like I just love that other people can appreciate what I appreciate in him, the art, like the music, the culture, like essentially I feel like what Marshall is trying to do with him continuing his studies in carnival studies is I feel like he's going to be the one to revamp carnival. Like a lot of events like Soca Monarch, like I strongly feel like that's an event that we need that as a culture. Like we need to keep carrying that legacy. That's something that should be happening every year. And I feel like he's probably going to be the one amongst, select others that are going to be the one to change that and to revamp that and to bring that back and like to reintroduce that to culture. Like this is carnival, this is soca. So, I never have anything bad to say about Marshall. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I think that's a great point. And your point too, I really do hope if he is the one, I hope someone is the one, anyone at this point, to bring back Soca Monarch. We had this conversation too when we were in Trinidad, again, with I think Jono and some of our other friends. Like, it is so critical to have a platform for young artists. And it's so necessary. And Soca Monarch was truly that. And it was for him, and it was for Fayan and Bungie and a lot of other artists that we know fairly well now that, that kind of came up in Soca Monarch. Like, and I remember the days of Soca Monarch where it was rammed, and people would bring their flags and the crowd would be going and it was just packed. And I used to watch it on TV and be like, oh my God, like, look at this crowd. Like, it's what you would consider a Mashal Monday size crowd, but for Soca Monarch back in the day. And I remember, some of the standout performances, Fan, Meet Super Blue, when she had the baby talking, and it was just like, just phenomenal. When Fantastic Friday came out and Super Blue himself did that. Bungie Garland, the Fireman, Silver Surfer with Fayan, Mashal's many performancers, Kerwin when he finally upset Groovy and he came out and he challenged Mashal when he sang Too Real and he said, Mashal, you went in this sing too long, and then he took it and I was like, I cannot believe I just watched Kerwin Du Bois like call out Mashal in the middle of Soca Monarch. What is this? And there's just so much culture that happened in those events with the artists that we know and love now. That, I agree, Soca Monarch truly, could use an overhaul. And I know Fan tried to do that and it didn't, she eventually had to step down because it wasn't working out. And I think what I would like to see and what I hope Mashal is maybe doing, but I hope others are thinking of it and trying to do it too. Mostly because I'm not there and not in a position to advocate for these things that I know so many of us want, is we need a platform to big up young artists. Like, we need a platform where they feel like they can come, whether it's like a Rising Stars, which is essentially what Soca Monarch was. It was like a Rising Stars kind of showcase. But I also have said for years, I used to say with my cousin when we were like our own little mini Soca analysts, is that we also need a platform to big up the people behind the music, the writers, the producers, all these people that don't necessarily get their flowers throughout a carnival season until one of their songs win Road March or wins Calypso Monarch or wins Soca Monarch. We need, what about the people behind the scenes? We need a platform for that too, because there are amazing producers behind the scenes. Tano, like, he's the new double M of this season, they're calling him. Michael Montano, aka Tano. He produced some of the biggest songs this season, and he's getting his flowers because, it's well known that he's produced those songs this season. I think that's great because in seasons past, you didn't really see producers or writers or anybody being big up like that. And I think that is a really important aspect because they contribute so much. Like, they contribute to the Soca. And without them, there wouldn't really be Soca along with the artists. So, I think it's important that we have platforms that recognize them as well as the younger artists. And I hope Soca Monarch comes back. I think it does, but I think it needs to come back in a refreshed and revitalized way. And, we've had this conversation. Rich felt at one point that Private should bring it back. And then we talked about it with Jono and stuff like that. And, our stance is that, it needs to come back under the ministry, the NCC, like, where it always was, because I'm not going to get into the bucks and the money and the things that go on in Trinidad. I don't know. But I think we should, we do need access to know more about the specifics, because if they're given a budget of X amount during the year, we need to know how is that money being used? I was reading an article that there are vendors and things of last year's carnival still pending payment, and now we're in another carnival season where there's been another budget allocated. How is that being used? Maybe I'm not looking in the right places. I haven't done a deep dive to look at for the numbers and the budgets, or if someone knows where that is and can point us in that direction, I would take a look. But I do truly think it's important that these things aren't invested in solely by private, because we've seen time and time again when things are funded and by private entities, it can quickly become corrupt. The sponsor of an event could also be the group that's winning the event. The person on the committee could be the one competing in the event itself. We saw a bit of that controversy with Gypsy and Calypso Monarch this year. He's the head of it, the head of the NCC, uh, and also competing in, I forget, I don't know if he made it to the finalists or the semifinals or whatever it was, but he was in the Calypso Monarch. So just things like that, where it's like there is a lot of room for overlap. It's a small, everybody wants to participate in the country, in the culture, but it's also a small country and things are bound to overlap at times. But there just needs to be transparency, I think. And I think that, transparency also starts with knowing where money is being invested and how that money is being used to fund things like these events that are important to our culture, like Soca Monarch.
No, I just think things that are done by government need to be disclosed to the public. Okay, if you're private, all right, fine, I get it. But like anything that's done by government, especially when it comes to carnival culture, I feel is super fair to be disclosed to the public because it's true. Like at this point, like Soca Monarch used to be this incredible thing to now where people kind of just look at it like it's gone and it's like non-existent and people like kind of look at it as a joke, but it is a huge cultural loss to the country. And I
To
don't
the
think
culture.
to the culture, and I don't think people are taking it as serious as they need to take it. And
Some people are though. I saw a lot of people, say it's like really shameful and it's very disappointing that it hasn't come back, and calling on it to come back. And I was actually like happy to see people were. I
yeah,
don't think it's the vast majority. The younger folks going to Carnival from here aren't saying like, "Where's Soca Monarch?" But I think the vets, like the people who know what it used to be, are calling for it, and are disappointed. And I think we need to keep, invoking that kind of outrage and demanding that it be brought back in some capacity, or revamped and brought back in a new capacity, because it is an important aspect of our culture, one that unfortunately many new mass players and mass goers won't even know is missing because it wasn't an aspect of their carnival to begin with. But it should, there's no reason it shouldn't be and it can't be if it was promoted accordingly.
yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I just see like there are people calling for it, but I feel like to the point where like a lot of people I feel who aren't calling for it, which is at least right now I feel like isn't the vast majority. What my fear is that people will become too comfortable with how things are without it. I feel like people are going to be like too comfortable going to the big events, the big flagship ones. Some of the newer things that are I guess are starting to come out. Yeah, nice and cool. But I feel like, yeah, my biggest fear with Soca Monarch is that people are going to be so comfortable with their current carnival experience that they're just not going to care about it. In the sense of like, why do I have to care about Soca Monarch when I can already see so and so and so at these events, right?
Mhm.
And I just like find that like people are more and more just kind of looking at it like, yeah, it's one big corrupt thing, haha, we all know it is, but like whatever, like we have other things that we have to do. And I'm just really afraid that like it's just not going to be advocated for, and I don't really know who's responsible and who is going to pick up the broken pieces and build it back into something incredible again. I don't even know how much of a priority it is to the people that are supposed to do it. I don't even know if young people actually like care about it. You know what I mean? It's all things that we would kind of have to find out. And I think until someone, with the influence and the power and the budget, some type of entity decides to come through, completely rebrand it and do something different with it. Until then, it's like, what are we gonna do? I feel like it kind of has to then, if we as the people want to take the responsibility of it, we then all have to come together as like a grassroots thing. Like we as consumers need to like buy tickets for it so that they have the budget. We have to attend it. We have to hire like our local vendors to like put it together. We have to ensure that like we get, some types of like sponsorship. Like we would have to advocate for it to happen if another entity doesn't do it. You know what I mean? And I,
I
yeah, go ahead.
I think I don't think it's a lost cause because again it's something that the government needs to get behind. I think putting it as far as like being grassroots or being privatized, I think it's possible, and I think if it's left open too long, someone will take up that space because it's missing. Fridays don't feel the same without Soca Monarch. I remember being up for hours, long after the bars are closed and you're back home. Because I used to, sit in the bar and watch it with my family, long after the bars are closed and we're home. I still used to be in bed watching it, and waiting up to see who's going to perform and who's going to say this and who's going to come out like this and what they're going to be wearing. I used to be up all hours just because you didn't want to miss anything and hear about it the next morning when the results come out. You wanted to see it in real time and be like, oh my God. And like all of Trinity Twitter used to be like tweeting and laughing along and being like, did you see that? Look at this. And if you were there in real time, it was just an experience of its own back in its heyday. And I think, I don't think that appreciation is lost. I think it just needs to be re-examined and brought back in a fresh lens. And I agree, if left too long, there is a space for the people or the private to come in and do something else with it. But in my heart, I don't feel like it would be what it should be. I think the government has the resources and the power and the means to make it what it could be. And they just need the right people to champion it and lead it through that. It doesn't have to necessarily be that we take up all the arms to do it ourselves. As much as it needs to be, they need to empower the right people, just like they did when Fayan was doing it, to take the reins. And that's what really needs to be done.
Yeah, no, definitely cool. I know we're running out of time, so I want to go into, I guess, like the actual week of Carnival, right?
Yes, let's
Sav and I weren't there. So Ash, this is your time to shine. Tell us all about your experience, your likes, your dislikes, just kind of everything, and what was like the general feel and consensus that you felt with this year, like compared to previous years.
So my week started on Wednesday, which was my birthday. So first of all, I just want to say that I now know that I cannot do two events in one day. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was my flat ass sandals. Maybe it was the pavement. I don't know, but my feet were like bleeding every day. Like every night I have to come home, soak my feet. Then in the morning I'm going to soak them again, and then we're just going to do it all over again. So that being said, Wednesday I started out with Punchy. So me and my friend, we were on the drinks inclusive side. I don't know. Drinks inclusive side was very much boring compared to general. I'm just like looking over at general and I'm like, wow, fucking fun. Like I just wasted my money, but okay, like still a vibe. And then we didn't spend too much time at Punchy because we did actually have tickets for Travis World Night Mass.
Mhm.
I think that event, it was just very much different from the events that I'm accustomed going to for Carnival. Like you said before, like we know Monday is Masha Monday, Tuesday is Cass, Wednesday is we have our designated fets that we go to each day.
Mhm.
But I feel like Travis World's Night Mass, I loved it. Like it
Awesome.
gave like a block party vibe, and there's drinks, there's food, like there's performances, and like it's like every people came with their coolers, and they set up, they set up their spot here, and then you walk across and like there's your friends over there, and then you have friends over there. Like it just very much gave like I'm home, like it's
Mhm.
carnival time. Like so I really like that event. I wish I would have been there a little bit earlier.
Mhm.
But it was still really, really good. Thursday. Oh my God, what did I do? Oh, sorry. Thursday, I went to Farmhouse and Shagaramas. Like, that was also a really nice event. The decorations was beautiful. Like, the scenery is beautiful. The food was great. There were, like, so many different options of food. I loved, like, just walking through the party. There were, like, promo girls handing out beers.
Mm.
Loved it. I probably had, like, 5 beers. Um,
I just want to say, like, that's something that I find when I go to events, though. It's kind of getting like rarer and rarer and rarer. So I'm glad that like that actually was a thing. Cause same thing. I just remember like a couple of years ago when I used to go to certain events, like I used to see a lot of people do it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then I walk in and I'm like, with my shots.
yeah, no, seriously, like I'm looking at my friend, I'm like, free beers, put them in your bag. Like, you know, like totally like missing, like, yeah, no, like they're doing this throughout the whole party.
Yeah.
But that was my first time at Farmhouse, and it was really, really good. I really enjoyed myself. Like I was only supposed to be there for like 2 hours, and then I was gonna leave and go to Voicey, but I probably got to Farmhouse like around 8 and left like minutes to 12. So at this point, you know, I'm hot and sweaty. Um, but Farmhouse, it was the only thing that I didn't like about it is like they have it in Shagaramas. You know, Shagaramas, one road in, one road
Right.
out. Like the traffic was insane. But you know, what you could do. But it was still overall like a really good event. Like they had performance from Teja, Nyla. Um, I know I'm missing a bunch of people because I was very much intoxicated. And you know, I'm like 5 foot, so standing in the back, can't see anything. But I still, I still had like a really good time. I think all the DJ lineups were good. We had Private Ryan, Travis World, you know, a bunch that were on that I could not see. But it's still overall like a really good event. I think that's probably an event that I'll probably put on my my to go list for next year for the events that I do plan on going to. That'll definitely be on the list. So after Farmhouse, I went to Voicey. I had a really good time at Voice. I know, like, I've heard people say, like, mixed reviews. Like, some people are like, ah, it was, eh. And then some people are like, oh, the thing was wrong. We really enjoyed ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, like, I had a really good time. I feel like Voice is one of those events. It just depends on the team you go with, who you're with, because I feel like that's gonna make it. Like, of course, like all the performances were great, like the dancers were great, like stage presence was there, like the confetti, the fireworks, like it was exciting. It was, you know, it was well put together. However, as much as I did enjoy it, I don't know that Voice is an absolute goal for me next year. I'm glad and grateful that I got to experience it this year, but it's not like a must do next year for me. Um, so Friday was a rest day for me because, like I said, can't do 2 events in one day, and I just did 4 events back to back between Wednesday and Thursday. So Friday was really a rest day for me, and I had hair appointments and nail appointments, you know, the whole girl thing. Saturday morning, AM Bush. I know there's been mixed reviews about AM Bush. This was my first AM Bush. Phenomenal. Like from start to finish, like literally the only thing I hated about it was that it wasn't where they usually have it. Like it was far, like far. I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember like the name of the area where it was, but I know it was not. I think usually they have it in Shakaramas too, right? Yeah, no, it was not there. It was further. I think it was somewhere in the east.
Yeah.
But yeah, AM Bush was great. I feel like from there, that's when like I really started to get excited. We're like, oh shit, like it's carnival. Like we're here. This is it. Like we slaved all year for this, you know? Caesar's Army, just take my money. Like that's a must for next year. A must for next year. I had a really good time there. So after it was so good, after that, like I was done for the day. Like it was over with. So now Sunday I went to Brian Lara. I love this event because it kind of like I got to like slow down and like I'm partying with like a different crowd. Like everybody's like, you know, like enjoying the ambience. The food is always like 11 out of 10. Like the drinks are good. Like the decoration is beautiful, phenomenal. Like then they had my favorite. I feel like you can't have a fete if you don't have this somewhere during the fete. But the tassa section, the rhythm section, the tassa, oh my God. Like literally they could have had rhythm section all night and I would have been fine with it. I would have been fine. The only thing like I didn't like about Lara was that it was an all white fete, but there were a lot of people that weren't in white. And I'm one of those people, I don't like all whites because I feel like that's the quickest way for me to dirty my clothes. Like, shit, you're serving curry. Like, but Lara is always still like a really good event, an event that I really enjoy. Like my aunt is messaging me like she was here in New York, and I'm posting things on Instagram, and she's like, "What are you doing at this old people fest? Like that is not your crowd. You're not supposed to be there." But I loved it. Even Kevin Hart's wife was there. She was actually standing right next to me. Oh my god! What I love about her, like, she wasn't stush. She wasn't like on celebrity time, and like she was just naturally having a good time. And like it wasn't until like afterwards when I got home and I'm like on Instagram, I'm like, oh my god, she was there. Oh my god, she's in my section. Like it was just such a vibe that there wasn't time to be starstruck and to be like like celebrity vibe and starstruck out. But Lara, a really good fet. Monday, my favorite day. I had the best time of my life on Monday. I registered and played Mass in Tribe, but I did jump up in Yuma the first half of the day on Monday. I had to go and check out Gel, make sure, he wasn't having too much fun without me. But I've heard a lot of people, I personally had fun in Yuma. Now, I've heard people say Yuma was kind of a disappointment this year. And, there were a lot of chaotic things that took place, which I think there's never going to be like a smooth, perfect sailing like carnival season. There's going to be a hiccup somewhere along the line. But, like this was my first time jumping up in Yuma. And like, I know like my sister and my brother-in-law, like they played in Yuma last year, and they said compared to last year, like the vibes were like, it was kind of off, like it was different. So after that, we made our way to Tribe. Let me tell you, y'all can say anything you want about Tribe, but Tribe knows what the hell they're doing. They have the formula, okay? Like the vibes was just on 1,000. Like everyone, like the crowd, the people, like everything was just on point. Like I don't even know how else to describe like how fun it was. Like literally to the point where me, like I could go all day. Like I was built for this fet life, carnival life. But like literally the vibes was just so like on point in Tribe to where I caught myself like, wait, hold on guys, wait, let me step to the side. I need water. Like there were times when I'm just like, I need a second. Like I gotta catch myself. But it was just like, I had like a really good time in Tribe. Same thing on Tuesday. I had such a good time on Monday to the point where Tuesday, like I didn't make it out the house until 12. Like literally my section is crossing stage. I'm seeing them on TV and I'm like, I just need a second. I gotta catch myself. Like, like I got feather work and the backpack and everything. Like I was just so drained from Monday. I couldn't even wear my feathers. Like I took like 2 pictures and I took it off. I'm like, okay, like let's just go. Like, but then I got out there on Tuesday and it's just like, I don't know, like the adrenaline, like being there, like thinking to myself, this is it. Like today's the day. Like this is what I've been paying for, like crunching all my dollars for, budgeting myself. Like this is it. And like some way, somehow I found the energy in me. And I literally played Mass by myself on Tuesday. Like, and I'm not somebody, I feel weird when I'm alone. Like I have to do things with people. But Tuesday, like I tell people all the time, if you're gonna go to Carnival, save your money, go to Trinidad. Like I played Mass by myself. Like, clearly like there's a bunch of people in Tribe. Like you see friends here, you see friends there, but like I literally like had a great time. I might have missed crossing Soca drum stage, but I made it my business to cross the Savanah stage. I had the time of my life. Like I might have heard DNA and Carnival Contract like 1,000 times, but like I was in my glory.
So I'm curious to know, like, how was the experience in terms of like every like costume pickup? And because I know for like a lot of the bands, 2023 was a really
It was a
chaotic
rough
year.
year. There was a
It
lot
was a
of
rough year
issues,
for
particularly within the Tribe family.
yeah.
And
The only thing I think we didn't hear negative things about was with Pure, right?
that was last year, yes, and
Yeah.
Lost Tribe last year.
And Lost Tribe, yeah.
But there was a lot, and it wasn't just in the Tribe family. Not to single them out, there was a lot of bands struggling last year. It was the first year back
Yeah, I
since
mean,
COVID.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in particular, there was a lot of people that were upset. We weren't one of them. We played with Bliss last year. We had a good time,
Yeah.
smooth pickup,
I would
no
say that
major issues.
our biggest issue, I mean, like was probably like for us. I think it was really just like how the traffic was, and like it was like I don't remember. Did we get to cross both stage? I think we only got to cross
So last
Socadrome,
year,
right?
so this
Yeah.
year, I think, we didn't play Mass, but this year, what I did notice, someone who follows Mass so closely as if I was there, I did notice, and I was really happy and kind of sad for myself, but really happy to see that a lot of bands were able to cross both stages, if not, multiple stages. I know Lost Tribe crossed all four, which is phenomenal. They are a competing band, so it makes sense. But I was happy to see that a lot of bands made it both to the Socadrome and to the Savannah, which they typically aim to do. But I don't think last year they did. At least, our band didn't. And it was disappointing because it was the first year back, and I lived to cross the Savannah stage, like Savannah Grass. Hello. But,
I told Savannah, I'm like,
it's,
yo, I've been playing Mass since 2018,
and
and
he's actually never
every year that
yeah.
I've played with Bliss, I've never crossed a Savannah stage ever. And I like to the point where I told her I was like I almost didn't even know that there was a second stage, right? And I was like, wait, what? There's two
I
stages?
swear I did not know there
No,
was
yeah, me
two
too.
stages too. Like
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, Soca Drum, damn it, I just missed it. And they're like, no, we crossed into Savannah. I'm like, yes. I'm like, okay, let me get myself together.
yeah. No, for real. I mean, like, if you're not from Trinidad and stuff like that, and like us,
You're
like,
not the Savannah
yeah,
Grass.
yeah. I genuinely didn't know, and then I was just like, yeah, like every year that I play, I've never been able to cross the Savannah stage, both on the Monday
And
and
when
the
he told me
Tuesday.
that, I was stunned because I was like, what do you mean you've never crossed the Savannah? Because in my head, I'm like, the Savannah is the stage. Like the
Right.
Socadrome is
Yeah.
the backup stage.
Do you know the first
And
time I ever saw and encountered the Savannah stage? It was when I was filming for Tribe All Six Bands.
yeah.
And then guess what band is crossing the stage on the Monday? Bliss. And I'm like, yo, y'all couldn't do this when I was paying my money to do this. I was so mad, right? But I saw the magnitude of that stage.
Yeah.
So
You know,
do all bands cross both? Because I know
So
like different
usually,
bands have like different routes.
so yeah, so usually, so the Socadrome was created. Don't quote me on when. I'm not even going to actually try to say when, but the Socadrome was actually done to reroute. I think specifically the tribe bands initially, but just reroute the bands to go to another stage because the volume was just it was taking too long to cross the Savannah. That's my understanding of it. Like there was just too many bands. They were too big. A lot of them weren't even competing anymore. Like, other than Lost Tribe, the other tribe bands don't really like actively do a presentation to compete for, band of the year. So the Savannah stage really became relegated in the past years as a priority for the bands that are competing. The idea, though, I believe, was always there. I think the Carnival Commission puts out the parade route, so it's not like the bands are saying we're gonna go here and then we're gonna go there and this is what we're gonna do. It's all dictated and set up, you know, by the powers that be. They're not the ones that say we're gonna go here and then we're gonna get stuck in a roadblock here and then we're gonna keep going here. They have a route that's designated to them that they share with the masqueraders, at distribution. We used to get these little cards that used to say, this was the route that we're going to take. This is our starting point. Did they always follow that route though? And especially in recent years, not so much. But the aim is always to cross both stages. The priority though, I think in years past, depending on the route that was given to them, is that a lot of the tribe bands, for example, would go to Socadrome first. And you usually end up crossing Socadrome very early in the day and then making
Yeah.
your way to the Savannah. On Monday, I understood from previous years and had experience from previous years, you have a greater chance of crossing the Savannah in certain bands just because Monday it's a less chaotic day. A lot of less people at times make it out on the road on Monday because they're mash up or still drunk from Juve. Tuesdays is where it always became a like, where's the band going? What stage? What time are we crossing the stage here? So it was always very much like a time crunch thing. Because if the bands can make the executive decision, okay, we missed our time to cross the stage here. Screw it, let's go to lunch and then make it to the Savannah afterward. Or
Me.
yeah. So it really depends. I think the intent is always there, but I think the parade route and how it's designated every year tends to switch up depending on the bands. And I don't know if there's an order in which they have to apply to give in a route, or if it's like the commission just gives everybody a route and they're expected to, like, I don't know how the hierarchy of who gets what route is determined and the times that they cross the stage is determined. But I do know it's ideally the intent to cross both. Obviously, though, there was a big controversy last year where, there was another mass band that became very disgruntled because they were cut off during their time to cross the stage by another band. And then when they finally got on the stage, their band leader was very, very upset and like, was very outspoken about the monopoly of like bands that are not competing trying to cross the Savannah. When you're not competing for Band of the Year, it takes away from the bands that did work on presentations and are competing bands in Band of the Year. I was glad to hear no controversy or, trouble came out of this year with regards to that, and to see a lot of bands were able to cross the Savannah. Because for me, crossing the Savannah means loads more, spiritually and emotionally than crossing the Socodrome. But I think they did something right this year because I saw a lot of people cross multiple stages, and I was very, very envious, but very happy for the people who could experience that, because a lot of people, I understand, it was their first time on the Savannah. And that is an experience like no other. And I think, whatever they did, I hope they do it again next year when I'm there, because I would like to cross as many freaking stages as I can, particularly the Savannah, because, Savannah grass. But I hope they continue whatever formula they got right this year. I know there was, bands, I heard after lunch, a lot of bands, there was some criticism that they started speeding after lunch. And I think people have to,
Yeah.
yeah, I think people have to understand too, there's probably a reason for that. And it's usually like, they do have to get to these places at a certain time if
Yeah.
you want the experience of crossing the
Mhm.
stage.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that the two stages is like super important. So I'm glad you got to do both, because like when I was playing, I never got to do it. The only time I ever did it was when I played Juve with Savannah.
He's
Um,
crossed the Savannah
for the
stage,
first time
yeah,
during Juve, which I absolutely loved. Like it was
at sunrise. It was
at
beautiful.
sunrise, like it was so incredible. Like it was so much fun. But yeah, no, that's cool. I'm just glad to hear that like Tribe rebounded, from like all the issues that they had last year. I'm glad to hear that like Masqueraders had like a different experience. It was really cool when we saw the trucks too. Like I'm glad they rebranded the trucks, and I'm just happy to see like them like actually increasing the user experience and the customer service. You know what I mean? Because I think it's very easy for people to like shit on a band when things go bad.
Mhm.
Um, and I do think when bands do good, like we do also have to like give them the applause that they deserve. So I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, I think like I think there was a lot of big changes in Mass this year. I think like, logistics and everything were much better. I do think like Spirit Mass 2 coming into like creation also like played a role too.
It gave them a necessary competition.
Yeah.
There was a lot of negative comments after last year's mass, both about the pricing, but also just in general about the overarching experience. Like, you pay so much money. There was costume mishaps. There was collection distribution, errors, and problems, and just the road experience being subpar. And I think what I commend all of the bands, because I didn't see, I saw some hiccups with Yuma. I saw there was a section in Tribe that, came under fire for not having costumes ready in time or at all. But, and that's really unfortunate for those who experience the negative side, right? But I do have to say that overarchingly, the general consensus was that, again, this was one of the best carnivals I think people experienced since 2020. And I was there in 2020 as well. And that was a year unlike any other. The vibes were just so pure that year. And I was really like elated to hear that it was similar, something similar this year in terms of the feeling of being back on the road. And it's really, great to hear bands taking the criticism that they got last year and taking it in stride and innovating on top of that, and listening to their consumers and coming back trying to be better. I think Spirit Mass, I also heard, a few, one or two, not great things about them, but I think it's all subjective to the consumer experience of, how that person, what that person wanted or what those people wanted. Overarchingly though, as far as distribution, goes, as far as experience and the offerings, I heard good things, like really, really good things actually. I think they're actually trying to gatekeep all the good things so people don't flood out Spirit next year. But I think they did introduce, one thing that was necessary in this space that I think we were talking about much earlier tonight, which was, there needs to be competition in the space. There needs to be something, because I feel like before, Human and Tribe weren't really competing with each other.
I feel like Tribe, and this is no shade to Yuma, but I really feel like Tribe is in their own league. Like,
Mhm.
think about it. Like, they have majority of like the big bands under Tribe. You got Hearts, you have Lost Tribe, you have Bliss, you have Rose, you have Rogue, you have Tribe, and Yuma kind of stands alone. Not taking anything away from Yuma, but I
Mhm.
feel like, Tribe has had years from experience because Tribe is actually a break off from
Poison.
Poison.
Yep.
So it's just like they clearly know what they're doing. Like they have it down to a T. Like,
Hmm.
I also think they have different demographics too.
Yeah, I think there's a space, right?
Yeah.
Yuma has its loyalists, Tribe has its loyalists, and each of the bands in Tribe have their loyalists. And I think what was missing was something to compete with both of those kind of giants in the space to say like, you guys are doing great. You didn't do so great last year. Overarchingly though, there's really been no innovation in the carnival space. Here's a new big band to like shake things up. And especially coming off of a year of bad reviews, I think it's what a lot of people wanted and needed. They wanted another option other than Tribe and Yuma, and they got it with Spirit. And those that did move over seemingly had a great time. But those that remained in their respective bands, Tribe or Yuma, or the respective bands of Tribe, had an equally great time because of the feedback that was given to these bands last year that they improved upon this year. So I think overall it was a win for Carnival because, you know, it forced innovation this year, both in the terms of a new band, but also with respect to the older bands, the old guards, as you might want to call them now. And I think without that innovation, Carnival itself is going to die, right? Like these bands won't last if they don't keep innovating. And for Tribe to be, like you said, a band as long as it has been is really spectacular and like amazing. And I think the fact that even after all these years, they came back and they took that feedback last year in stride to improve so much this year is really important because without that innovation, if they were just complacent and said, we're just gonna, stick to the same formula and we're gonna put out a new theme and, just try to be better than we were last year. They were like, no, like, let's do even better. And they brought the snack trucks and they brought the new drinks truck. And that just shows that they are listening and there is innovators behind in the mass camp, pushing mass forward because without that, it will die. People will eventually get fed up of the same old thing or the same disappointments or the same complaints that they have every year. And, mass itself was born out of rebellion and protests and, the fight for freedom. And I think that creativity is what fuels, the creativity of the people behind mass are people who appreciate that innovation because, mass was a protest, an innovative protest back in its day. And I think the mass makers of Trinidad are some of the new protesters of the day. They're constantly thinking of how to shake things up. And I think that's something I really respect about everybody in the industry, in the carnival industry in Trinidad, is that they don't stay static. They're constantly thinking of what else can we do? What can we do better? And without that, the culture wouldn't move forward. Mass wouldn't, keep getting bigger and better every year. And I think there's a lot of conversations of things that we still need to do better. And that's where price is a concern and, outpricing locals is a concern. But I think, we have to keep pushing forward and having these conversations. Otherwise, mass itself won't keep evolving. And that's what it was meant to do. Art is an evolution.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, yeah, I think those are all like very solid points. I'm glad to hear that the experience on the road was good this year, better than previous years, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. You definitely deserve to enjoy it because I know how hard you work. And I just know how hard it is to like just get to mass in general, what it means. And Sav and I were sad to sit it out, and we were like, we never want to do this again. But
I
like,
said I was never missing a carnival and then I missed one.
yeah,
Me
yeah.
and
This
Marshall.
is it's the first one I missed, but I'm grateful that we got to have two unique experiences, like going in January, seeing what that's like. I'm glad to like hear your perspective of going for yet another year.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I know there's a lot more stuff that we want to discuss that we don't have time for. Maybe we'll arrange doing like a part two of this if we need to,
I think we need to.
yeah, if we need to, it's fine. We'll figure that out. But yeah, no, for us to wrap, I just want to say, yeah, thank you guys for sharing everything. I think all of that was like awesome. I hope for everybody listening, that you appreciated all the combo and the insight too, and like definitely comment and let us know like what your carnival experience was like. If you went, if you weren't there, let us know like what your thoughts are about mass and stuff in general. We'd love to hear from you guys as always. Be sure to obviously subscribe to us on YouTube and we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we're keeping it going. We're keeping it going, and we're gonna be doing our best to keep putting out episodes. If you guys have episode ideas and things that you would like to see, please let us know. So as always, it's the Soca Analyst. Big up and bless.
Soca Analyst. Caribbean culture to the world. Subscribe now on YouTube, iTunes, Podcast, and Google Play Music.